Yeah. I'm about to. Good morning. Hi, everybody. The Finance Committee is called to order. I have 9:34 on Thursday, April 18th. All committee members are present, that being Alderwoman Finlayson to my right and Alderwoman O'Neill to my left. And we have Alderman Arnett here as well, and Alderwoman Pindle Charles making her way down the hall there. So we have an agenda to approve, so I'll accept that motion.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
I know, I say it different every time. And, okay, I'm a little thrown by business and miscellaneous, but we'll go to minutes. May I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes of April 17th, 2024?
Move approval of the minutes from the April 17th meeting.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. So for general discussion, we have two departments, and we're still trying to stick with the hour slot, and we're gonna, there's no break for lunch today, we'll just have a break in between. So if you could start with your presentation, and if you'd like to introduce everybody in the audience, that would be really nice, because they're here spending their time. And I hope you still have somebody at the front desk collecting money.
We do. We do. That's part of the reason that not everybody's here right now. I'm Jody Dickinson. I'm the finance director.
Katie Conley, budget manager.
Capri Turner, budget analyst.
And those behind me, I can ask them to stand up. We have Corey Bradley. He's a risk manager.
Okay, come up to the mic real quick, one by one.
She already gave his name.
Corey Bradley, risk manager.
Okay. Next, quick.
Hi, Anna Carr, County Associate 3.
Thank you. What does Carson say? Quickly.
Vanessa Kane, Accounting Associate 3.
All righty.
I'm Avis Paisley. I'm an accounts payable.
I didn't get that.
Julie Donnelly, Assistant Finance Director.
Okay. The act for person.
Catherine Weston, Accounting Associate 2.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nikki Olajire, Accounting Manager.
Thank you.
Josh Arcelesi, Accounting Associate 2.
Thank you. Thank you all. Wow. Okay.
So I will add that not everybody came. It's what we call turn-off day, where we've made calls and people are calling to pay what they owe on the utility bills. So that's why everybody didn't come up from that side. They're fairly busy down there. And then we have people that work from home 1 or 2 days a week. So and we have couple people out. So that is why the whole crew's not here, but I want to start by thanking them all. The budget process wouldn't even be possible without my team to right and left. And during that process, there's a lot of extra burden that falls on the staff behind me, because I'm not able to work with them as much, to meet, to talk about issues. So Julie kind of holds down the fort on that side while we're working hard on the budget. I really appreciate them. They're a great team. Right, I wanted to start their presentation talking about our mission. The finance department serves city departments, citizens, and other stakeholders by creating and maintaining systems that ensure the sound and efficient management of the city's financial activities and protect our financial assets. I have the functions listed there. As if you would compare this to last year, we've pulled the purchasing out of there, because as we're presenting it for budget purposes, purchasing is now a part of the central services office per the budget. And those are the functional areas that we serve. Next. Our department provides staff support to the Finance Committee, the Financial Advisory Commission, the Audit Committee, and the Police and Fire Retirement Plan Commission. Here, we created a slide a couple years ago. I've edited it a little bit. Just all the additional, besides those main areas, those main functional areas, there's a lot of other projects, miscellaneous programs to get started that we are charged with caring for. So I won't go into detail on all these. A lot of it's the same from year to year. I did add a couple of things. One is the public safety employee tax credit that's not fully implemented yet, but we have started and created a form, and we just got to push that out. And I intend, and there's been some questions around that, so I intend to make that retroactive back to July 1st for anybody who qualifies. Again, I was trying to think of anything new. The electric transit ferry service is still in process. The Resilience Authority, besides the Cars Beach purchase, we also purchased the Moores property this year. And it sounds like a simple transaction, but with everything that was involved in gathering the funding for that, that took quite a bit of effort. We've done a couple of slides here. This is the team, and it is by title, shows you how we're organized. We'll go to the next one. And the next one is the same thing. It's just got the names to the duties. So you can take a look at that. You can see one of the notable things is the vacancies. We're down 2 accountants at this time. And we are down a senior accountant because, and a lot of this happens because of promotions, but also we've had a couple people leave recently, so. We just filled a cashier position. I don't know if you've met Katie Pickard. She's at the front window, so if you see her there, you can stop and say hello. She's a new face. All right, we can move on. You know what, let me go back for a minute. Let me talk about the colored codes that are on the left. This chart goes back a couple years, if you remember when I drew out what I thought the department should look like in total. And over the years, we've been adding a position here, a position there. And this year, we're asking for the second budget analyst. And you see there one that was funded in '24. And the other position that I got, the grants administrator, as you know, we've moved that to Public Works to help with their capital project grant drawdown process, since they have so many new grants. And then in the future, I would love to have an internal audit function for internal audits, just so we can do control reviews at departments and do risk assessments and evaluate changes that we need to make even within our own office. But as of right now, as you know, we're out of space. Even to fill out all the vacant positions, we're going to need to move people temporarily at first, and then find a permanent place for us all to be together in one facility. And we've talked a little bit about that with the space planning capital project to find a way to expand our offices.
I'm sorry, I need to interrupt. Could you reissue this with a color code explanation, especially for those that aren't here?
So if you look at the left, there's colors on. That's
That's what it is. Okay, I thought.
That's just telling you, like, the orange one is the one that we want in the future.
Okay, I thought it was pointing to the respective departments to the right.
Oh, I'm sorry. Now, you know what? That's my inept messing around with the org chart. And that line, that vertical line that's there is supposed to be to the left of the arrows. I'm sorry. That was me. I was trying to move everything to one side, and I forgot the arrows.
Okay, that's fine. I misinterpreted
that's
the
for.
arrows. Okay, gotcha. Go ahead.
Yeah. All right. All right, so I'll run through the accomplishments. I wanted to have a moment here to talk about our department and how we functioned in '24, and I think it tells a tale when I sent this to Katie. I said, what are some of the accomplishments? And the first thing responded was, "I survived," which is really kind of the story for a lot of the staff. I mean, with the vacancies and refilling, and then a lot of the times we fill from, when we have a vacancy, we fill from the inside, so that creates another vacancy, and job duties are shifting, and all this time, we're still processing all of your financial transactions, taking in, millions of dollars through the cashier desk, more through wire transfers, doing the payroll every week, looking at the time records, reviewing those, and issuing the payroll biweekly. We have numerous accounts payable checks, dozens and dozens and dozens of checks that go out every week. And we have those positions fully staffed, and we had some issues about a year ago. It was getting very slow. So we've caught up with most of that. We still have a couple of issues. And we definitely need to start assigning somebody to work just with the P-card transactions, because the departments are using them more frequently.
The what?
P-card transactions. Those are the cards from the bank, and there's more convenient method to use for smaller purchases, for travel, those types of things.
Credit card.
Yeah.
So those are a time-consuming effort, and we really need to have a staff person assigned to those. And I've taken some actions, and I'll talk about it in a few minutes. But to the accomplishments, the first one goes to what I was just talking about. We've had significant turnover, competitive, and we've had a lot, that's a couple, I'm sure there's multiple reasons, but one is the competitive market that we're in for accounting clerks and accountants and anybody in this field. They're in demand, and it's hard to get recruits. We've advertised, we interview, we advertise again, we interview, and try to make offers, but that's one of the reasons why we're trying to, make the pay scale a little bit more competitive, so that there's not longevity holds and that type of thing that would prevent somebody from taking an offer here long-term. And the second bullet, we've issued our annual comprehensive financial report. It was a couple weeks earlier this year than last year, and kudos to Julie for pushing that through. It's quite an effort. And as you know, we had the auditors present, and we had a clean opinion, no internal control issues, and we're still strong financially, so that is a badge of honor, I feel, partially for our department, but also for the rest of the departments that are participating in our activities.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Purchasing staff, during the year, they are part of our department, and they continually supported the competitive process, and they've also had problems with, they were vacant, they've had at least 2 vacancies for most of the year. And when we finally filled the procurement officer, then we had vacancies, we filled it, and then we just lost a senior buyer who was a temp that took a job somewhere else. So again, the competition is...
Was that someone recently hired?
Well, it was a temp. So when we had the vacancy and senior buyer, we hired a temp and felt that she was doing very well. But in the meantime, she was probably looking for other opportunities, and then left us just a while ago. So now they have another vacancy over there that we're trying to fill. We implemented our Governmental Accounting Standards Board 96, and this is something we talked about at the audit presentation regarding subscription-based information technology arrangements. That's something that Julie spearheaded. It's a lot of work. We talked about it at that time, going through every single software-based arrangement and looking at the terms. We're working on implementing ACH payments to help replace physical checks. We aren't there yet. We've started that, but haven't moved very far with it this year. We're working on an optional email feature for utility invoices. We've made some progress there, and we've had citizens ask if they could get their invoice by email instead of by the United States Postal Service, which is how most of them go out. We have implemented a Google form for our AP invoices, which has helped speed up the disbursement process for our AP clerks.
For AP, what is?
Accounts payable, I'm sorry, here I am throwing out those,
No, that's
the lingo.
And what
It's
is ACH payment?
That is a way of, I'm not going to be able to tell you what ACH stands for, but that's a electronic way of transferring a payment from the city to a vendor with it, directly to their bank account.
So that's what they're called.
Online bills.
It works sort of like a direct deposit.
Automated clearinghouse.
Oh, see? Thank
Really
you.
what it stands for? Cool, okay.
Thank you, Kayla. That's what Google's for, right?
It'll send a check.
So we've improved our city's budget process by training the staff to use OpenGov. I think they've gotten much better at that this year. Last year was the first year, right, in OpenGov, and did some more training this year. Capri and Katie have been holding virtual trainings to help people through that system, and it worked much better this year. And besides that, the budget book, as you will see, is in much better shape visually. That's twofold. One, OpenGov at my urging, and probably a lot of other customers fixed some of their features in there so that we could edit what's coming out of the system when it goes onto paper. And they finally implemented those, and we've used it and been able to edit our presentations within the budget book so that it's visually consistent and easier to read. Our city's risk manager works with departments to increase safety for employees. That, as you know, is Corey Bradley, and he's also active with a couple of committees in the departments to help address individual department concerns. Let's see, creative process. Yes, and then in that last bullet, you see how many budget revisions we've processed during the year 94. What I don't have in these accomplishments is the transactions that the other divisions process every year. If we tried to quantify how many utility bills we send, how many cash receipts, it's going to be in the tens of thousands probably. Next. All right, so here we're starting with our performance measures. We tried to do a performance goal for each division, and then a couple of ways, and one or two ways to measure that. And I'd like to thank Vicki, our Assistant City Manager, for walking through this with me, because when you're in a department like finance, it's hard sometimes to figure out how to use performance measures to measure what you're doing and what your goals are, and trying to tie those into measurements and what can be measured and what can't be measured. The first one here talks about accounts payable transactions processed within 30 days. As I mentioned, we were having some issues about a year ago with the speed of the payments. And that was a lot due to staff turnover. There was a time when we had only one person on that desk for several months. We would like to get to the 90% benchmark, and since we've just set this benchmark, we haven't had any measures for it yet, and that's one of the things we'll be working with the staff to try to run reports to show us how quickly we're getting those through. The second one talks about the percent of transactions that are processed accurately, and again, we would like 90%. We have to figure out a way to measure those because that's a more difficult measurement to try to pinpoint, because when you have to fix something, you don't always stop and mark it down or note it, and it won't get picked up with the reporting as easily as something as how many days it took you to process an AP transaction. You can go to the next one. Here, we have a goal of increasing efficiency of city spending. This is partially budget related. We want the variance between our budgeted expenses and revenues versus the actual measures to be fairly low. We've set the benchmark of less than 5%. I think we're fairly close on that. I haven't measured it, but we were much better in '24 with the revenues, and the '23 revenues were also fairly close to budget. It's the expenditure side that we'd like to have more time to analyze so we know how close the departments are to spending their budget. We measure debt proceeds. We have to monitor debt proceeds so that we spend them within a certain time frame according to the federal rules. And we'd like to get 85% of the debt spent within 12 months. I don't have a measure for that now. I do know that we have not accomplished that this last 12 months because we had a significant debt issue in December of '22. And we have not yet spent all of those proceeds because a lot of them were for city dock, and that hasn't moved as quickly as we were hoping to. We want to make sure that we're spending our grant funds speedily and getting reimbursed. We have a benchmark there, again, that we haven't measured. And then we want to set a percent of expenditures that we're going to pay using electronic means, as we talked about, ACH, P cards, et cetera, rather than by a physical check put in the mail. That's very manually intensive from our perspective. And then you have the risk that the check gets lost, then we have to reissue the check. And it's just a lot of extra work when you're working with a manual check. Here we show a goal on the billing side to do accurate and timely billings for utility, CFA, and the general billings. Again, we're setting a benchmark of 90%, the percent of the bills that are processed correctly the first time, and the percent of the current customer account balances that are collected. Here we have the performance measures for our risk management. Corey's been working on trying to find some benchmarks that he can use to apply to these two measures, how much we're spending on workers' comp claims and the number of lost days of work. I know he's always focused on those elements and trying to reduce them, but we're working on getting some accurate benchmarks from the industry to see where we should be targeting and then measure against our actual results. This is an outline of our budget. As you see, this not a big change budget to budget. It's about 3%. A lot of that's in the salary side. A little bit of a drop on the contractual services, but I think we've moved some of our software costs down into capital outlay, which is where we should have our software costs for OpenGov. Is that the only one that's there? Our debt book product also we pay on an annual basis. Move on. And this is just a depiction, a pie chart depiction of where we're spending our money. As you can see, salaries and benefits is the lion's share, more than 75%. And contractual services is most of the rest of that. Within that contractual services is a lot of different things.
Director, what I'd like to do, because the next half of your presentation is on, non-allocated and, the big picture budget allocation. So I'd like to just stop here.
Okay, talk
for
about
any
finance.
questions specific to the finance department only, right? Okay, so if anyone has any questions now, I'll go first. I'm confused on the grant administrator. In the staff chart, it says on page
Grant administrator.
on page 63, it has grant administrator to be determined fiscal year 24, 1, and then fiscal year 25, 0.
Yeah, so, yeah.
But at the same
So
time,
that
that's
is
your-
the position that you gave me for '24.
Yeah.
We're intending to fill it, and then we decided that Public Works had a better need for that grants administrator position. So that's why you see it going from 1 to 0, correct?
But as part of your performance measure, you said you wanted to, percent of grant funds spent is.
So that would be more along the lines of the operating grants and making sure we get those spent quickly. And also although we don't always participate in the drawdown asking for reimbursements from grants, for operating and capital, we need to keep our arms around that so that we have to forward fund a lot of those expenses with our own cash. And then we ask for reimbursement from the grantor. And we've got to make sure that's happening both from the operating side, which usually falls to the departments, and from the capital side, which is now going to be handled mostly by DPW. But we need to make sure that's happening. So it doesn't mean that it's not part of our role.
Okay. Could we have, because I think we would probably spend about 15 minutes talking about this, is there some kind of a flow chart that you can provide us on how the grants are secured, and then who manages them, and then who pays them out? I don't know the answer to that, except for community grants. And is there anything else you want to add?
So are you talking about grants going out the door?
Grants coming in and grants going out.
Well, correct. And I don't know if there's a clear delineation of roles there on grants coming in and grants coming out.
Well, could we ask which grants she's referring to? Are they grants coming into the city, or are they grants that we are paying out?
So in this particular case, the performance measure is around grants the city is receiving, not grants the city is giving.
All departments, though? All departments?
All departments.
All departments. Okay, go ahead.
Yesterday, Alderman Arnett asked for copies of the standard operating procedures. And one of those that you'll get a copy of in response to that question is a standard operating procedure on grants.
Okay.
To talk about those very things. So it's a few pages long, but that is intended to actually delineate some of that kind of stuff. What are the expectations about how we handle them?
That's it. I know I'm pathetic, but that is music to my ears.
Yeah, so that was.
Thank you for asking for that, Alderman Arnett.
Yeah, that's not a flow chart per se, but if you read it, you'll have a better understanding on how we process our grants that we're asking for.
Okay.
And my goal is to make sure that we're getting that money in as quickly as we can.
Because from the revenue charts, they are substantial. I mean, they are substantial.
Yep, and getting bigger every year.
No, it's good stuff. It's less percentage on property tax. City Manager?
Yes, Michael Malinoff, City Manager. And to build on what Director Dickinson said about the position, you all had originally allocated it in finance. Finance and the departments got together, and Ms. Dickinson thought correctly that it would be better in Public Works primarily, but also to help other departments as well, not just Public Works, whether it's recreation, police, OEM. And it gives us a little bit more generalist of a position for the time being to assist in the management of those grants, the technical processing.
Yeah.
I'm not clear on why Public Works.
Because of the number of grants, and two reasons. One, you've heard this time and time again, space. They have room. And two,
they have more space?
Yes,
really?
They do. They're the last frontier, like Star Trek. No, just kidding. But they do have room for people to sit. And they also have a number of very large grants that they are processing for a myriad of projects that, although may have been procured from one department or another, OEM, for example, end up with them for the projects like City Dock and you name it.
I understand the CIP projects being in Public Works, because that's their actual hands-on. I'm not clear on all the other departments.
All right.
Answering
And that's more, okay, all right.
I'm sorry, what? Oh, yeah, so let's differentiate between capital grants and operating grants. The capital grants is what this position was mainly intended to help with, because when I first started here, there might have been 2 capital grants. Now, I haven't counted them, but there's probably 20, at least.
Yeah.
So that process is getting much more cumbersome, which is one of the reasons why I thought we needed a resource to pull the money in, because it was getting forgotten. They'd get the grant, they'd build the project, and there was nobody really assigned to collecting that money. So this way, there is a person, and at DPW is the appropriate place. They're managing most of the capital projects, right? So they know when they're spending money, if that expense, does that qualify for the grant? Go ahead and ask for the reimbursement. They will also, and the reason that the city manager mentioned, like Rec and Parks, there's a lot of those capital grants that are tied to Rec and Parks projects. So they may play a role with this grants administrator to help draw down the funds from the grantor agency. Now,
So can we call this capital grant administrator to be clear on the function? Because I'm hearing, I think, that there's going to be an operating grant administrator.
So as is, there are operating grants throughout all departments. Fire, police, OEM.
And finance
Planning
has a
zone.
grant, has an accountant focused on the
Yeah,
operating
and-
grants
Yeah,
already.
and I have an accountant that helps them handle their transactions, but the departments themselves are responsible for accumulating the monthly or quarterly requests that go to the agency and asking for the reimbursement. So they have staff in their departments to handle their operating grant reimbursement requests. We work with them hand in hand as far as getting those requests out. They send drafts to us when they're getting ready to send them, and Suzanne, my grants accountant, checks them against what's in the system, makes sure she knows where all the transactions are coming from, and then says, okay, and then they go ahead and submit it. So they're kind of working as a team with my grants accountant.
So I just think we should be clear on who these people are.
Okay.
And
Yes.
what they do.
Yes.
This position on page 63 is the CIP grants administrator that is moving
That's-
from finance to DPW.
Yes.
But there are operating grants coordinators, analysts in each department who will still be working through the finance department, someone in the finance
Yes,
department.
yes, working hand in hand.
Okay, I just think we should be clear and everybody should be aware of
That's
this
true.
process, because we aren't.
Yeah,
It's not. And I think what we're getting at, and the risk to money coming in is who has, the basic question is who has accountability of these grants, you know? And I don't know if that's a one-word answer or not, but I think
Depends.
it depends, I know. First step is if we get that, even if it's just
It
that
is-
piece of it, and I'm gonna do a flow chart.
There's actually a flow chart in the SOP,
Oh, okay.
so you can,
You did.
it may not
That's
answer your
right.
question, so you may still end up doing one.
Caitlin
Right.
has sent it to us, she said.
Yeah,
okay.
it is very extensive, and Vicki was pivotal in helping us pull that together. We had lots of meetings with department staff, and
Okay.
got everybody's input as to how we were going to handle.
Well, something is working, I know that, because of the increase. So- And then yesterday, Karen Steele mentioned her problem with billings, and that caught my
So-
ear. And is that
Yeah, are you
something-
talking about the fact that she was saying that her invoices come in late? I wanted to comment at the time, that happens in all departments. The vendors just don't always send the invoices timely, especially in the construction projects. Those can come many months later. And what reason it's a problem for departments like the Office of Law is because we watch them. We have to watch them in July. We monitor them. Julie and the accountants, they watch those payments come through, and anything that's related to the fiscal year, for instance, this year, 24, if it's related to this year, we charge it to 24. As long as we keep our books open for 24 and keep accruing things back into that year, the departments don't always remember that they're coming, that they had the services, how many services did this firm render? And so when they get that invoice, sometimes they're surprised and they realize, oh my gosh, I overspent my budget, or, you know, that kind of thing. And that's even happened to me before, where it's like, oh, you know, things have a delay. Construction, typically late, I think those are the ones, right, Julie, that come really late, and like 6 months later, somebody will come up with a big construction bill that we have to accrue back, because it's significant
Yeah,
in
those
size, so.
construction guys. So-
It is, but it's part of the accounting process.
Last quick question, you mentioned the P cards and the ACH. Are you training the residents on this so that ultimately?
So
it's an
we don't
efficient
have them
process?
implemented from our side first. Once we have a working system, we do test batches.
Okay.
When we've done a test, at least one test batches for ACHs, but there were some problems with the bank, so we have to go through that process again. And I think we're getting close to being ready to go forward with that and start testing some vendors using ACH.
Yeah, and bilingual and all that, just when you send out instructions.
When you say residents, it's P cards are internal, so it's
Do I have the wrong?
basically credit cards that a different department can use to purchase.
Oh, I thought it was for
items.
residents paying their bills.
No, no. Mm-mm.
Oh, okay.
No, when I was talking about P cards, that's the term we use for, it's a purchasing card. And governments and businesses use them, they issue them to individuals or departments, and they use that card to go to their vendors that they have to go to frequently, or to use to make hotel reservations or to pay for costs when they're on trips, those kind of things.
Okay.
And they're using them more frequently.
Okay.
And that is causing, there's an issue with the coordination there of us processing those transactions, because there's so many. They've got to get a receipt, they've got to attach the receipt to the electronic record. So I am bringing on somebody right now contractually that's going to help with that process, and hopefully we can get that caught up to date and all these things posted. And we've selected a vendor. We're moving to a new P card company. Right now we're using our current bank, Wells Fargo. We're going to use a JP Morgan product that a lot of the area governments use, and they have a very robust site that is going to alleviate a lot of the issues, and the cards, we have to issue new cards, et cetera. So we'll be going forward with that in the next couple months.
A little bit of housekeeping. I see Captain
Miguez.
in the audience. Could you get word to the police department that we'll be 15 minutes delayed? It's okay.
We have it.
Just because I can just judge that.
We're almost done.
May I follow up about the P cards? I remember when we didn't use them at all, and we've come a long way. Do the department heads have oversight of those cards?
Yes.
Because I know there has been some lag with people getting reimbursed or giving the permission to use their cards. So I just want to make sure that's been worked out, that the directors have oversight.
Right now, the cards are issued to a department, and a department head might have, like Rec and Parks has one for the recreation side and one for the park side, and they use it for those purposes. And the director is in control, and it's usually within an administrative person's control that's actually tracking what people are using it for, trying to gather up the receipts, which is an issue. When you have one card for a department, that can be an issue. And the new program, the cards are issued in the person's name. They're a city card, they're issued in their name, so they're responsible for their own transactions. So you know, this is a person that's, you have to have a receipt to attach to every transaction.
So the department heads get the final.
They actually
Say,
have to
let's say
approve,
monthly.
in our system, they have to approve the transactions. So
Right.
they see everything, and they approve them for processing.
Okay, my question was, but at the end of the month, let's say, the department heads are able to confirm the use of the card by their staff, and then that is what they pass on to the finance department for payment, or how does?
So it's happening simultaneously. The transactions as they occur at the vendor site are automatically processed by our bank. And then those transactions are processed at the end of each month. The bank gathers together a batch, and we download it to the departments. And then they start their process. Okay, here's what we used it for. They're supposed to attach receipts to every transaction, and then that then there's a process whereby they release that and it's ready for our review, and then we do a review. This is kind of basic, it's much more technical than this. So it's kind of all happening simultaneously, but there's an approval process that happens there at the department. Then we look at it, is there enough, does it comply with our policy? Do you have all your receipts there? Have you bought only things that are allowed to be bought? We have that review process, and then we release that for posting.
I heard you say you were hiring someone to oversee this.
It's getting, yes.
And so that's why I was asking, what's the role of the directors and their responsibility?
That person is more on our side. You have to get back to the departments. You don't have a receipt attached to this. The receipt's doesn't have all the information on it. Can you please try to get another receipt? Those type of questions. So they have to kind of coordinate with the departments, make sure they've got all their stuff posted, and then take that final step of releasing the whole batch and posting it to our records. So that's more for our side, the coordination side. That's where we're not, I'd say we're not performing as well as we could at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay. So is there any other questions specific to the finance department?
I do. I have two more.
I do have some questions. We got sidetracked a bit, but.
Oh, okay.
I don't think the second half is going to be as extensive as the first half.
It isn't? Okay.
But,
There were some just substantial changes in numbers, like debt service and self-insurance that
okay,
just wanted to
all
handle
right.
on.
I should be able to go through those pretty quickly, but
Okay.
Okay, go for
she's,
it.
Okay, I'm gonna kind of go back to the grants because one of the things that we talked about is, I understand the CIP grants, the capital grants, but internal grants going out, and somebody from your department is partially handling that?
so we were, I don't think are you still on the committee? Yeah, we are gladly out of it. Julie last year was on the committee, and we were trying to coordinate the receipt of the reports, the quarterly reports at one time, and that might have been 2 years ago, because there was a lack of staff from Office of Community Services and the city manager's office that had been running that originally. Vicki and the Office of Community Services are now running it, which it should be. We should not be involved in the process of doing programming and determining who gets grants. And we're just handling it from the payment side. It comes into the system through the department for payment, and then we process the payments. That's the limit of our involvement now, which is the way it should be.
Okay, so I guess I'll save the rest of my grant questions until the community grants come before us and move into there.
And they handle some of those other programs, like, what do you call them? The neighborhood,
Adopt a community.
Adopt a Community, Children and Family Assistance. That was one of Alderman Gay's initiatives. They're handling those as well, so.
Those are being handled outside of finance besides making the
Just
checks.
payment, yeah.
Okay.
So they're
Processing.
not included in what's on
Tuesday?
page, the next page?
No, yeah, so when you.
Oh, the number
This, we
is
can
that,
segue here. This is, the reason that we put community grants here as far as an expense item in the budget, it possibly could go to OCS. We haven't really talked about that yet. It always resided here, and this is the account where we record those transactions going out the door. We show it in finance non-allocated because I think at the time that it was created, that was the only place to put it. We didn't have an Office of Community Services, and we can contemplate moving that into their budget as one of their programs as well, because really it's just here as a place to hold it, and we are not controlling it anymore.
Yeah, we'll recommend that, I think.
So, but this number does not include Adopt a Community or
No,
the other?
no.
This
Just
is
community.
just the community
Right.
grants, general community grants?
Yes,
Okay, so there is a proposed $50,000 increase?
yes.
Okay.
Okay, so my next question goes back to page 5 of your presentation where you were talking about the performance measure of, sorry, I can't even read that. It's not page 5. Yes. It's page 9. So the operations. I get a lot of people saying that they've submitted invoices and it takes forever and forever and forever. This does not reflect that. This reflects that 95 or 90%
No, that's a
of the time-
benchmark. A benchmark is what we shoot for, and this is what I refer to. Go ahead. You ask
Okay.
your question and then I'll.
So I know that there's new measures. Do we currently know what the percentage is?
No, we don't. This is what I was saying. We set this a couple months ago, Vicki and I, as a 90% goal. I will say that there was an issue, and then what I was referring to, late spring into the summer, a lot of things were going out late. And we've gotten caught up, though. The two clerks at accounts payable were still in training. We were trying to push things through, and a lot of things were behind.
Okay.
But they have since caught up, and most of our check requests are going out really quickly now.
Okay. And so my question was going to be, is it also an issue with whatever department it's coming from delayed as well? And so
It can be.
see a flow chart on that.
It can be.
Alderwoman Tierney's, so just so we have an idea, for a constituent to call me and say, I have now put in my 7th request, it's been 6
Yeah.
months.
Every-
I've had
yeah.
to pay, and now I'm paying interest on, blah, blah, blah.
So it could be the department. Everything starts with the department. And they have a service that they hire somebody to do, or they buy something. And then they have to process a payment, and they can do it in a couple of different ways. But either way, when the invoice comes in, sometimes it comes to us, sometimes it goes to them. They have to start the process in the system of saying, here, please pay this bill. We received our goods or services. Sometimes it can be a holdup there. And then in the system, it gets to us eventually, and then we have a process. So as far as our part, is what I was speaking to earlier, there was an issue. But now we've sped that up quite a bit, and most things are clearing very quickly now.
Okay. Would it be too cumbersome to ask that part of that benchmark includes
Like,
the individual departments and their performance
okay.
on that?
We can talk
future?
about that. That's going to be like a combined effort, like how we're performing and how they're performing, and we could play a role in trying to make sure they're adhering to it. But I'll work with Vicki on trying to.
Because if we always have one department that
Mm-hmm.
we're waiting on the most things from, then perhaps that's in a department that needs either another staff or a
Right.
new way of doing,
Right.
a new structure to
Yeah.
their current operation.
And I think you will find that with some of the departments, they feel a little overwhelmed with the administrative side of getting everything moved through the system.
That would be helpful. Thank you. My last question is, and I don't know if we should look at it in the contract services breakdown. Can you just explain those? I mean, I know what Brinks is, but level 1 ADP, the consultant,
And so, yeah. So.
64 in the budget book.
So on the contract services account, Brinks, of course, they're picking up cash at a couple of our sites. Shred It, that's obvious, shredding confidential documents. Level 1 is the company that prints and mails our utility billings, our quarterly utility billings. ADP helps us with the payroll process. And hopefully within a few months, that'll be NeoGov. That's a new system that we're implementing that Tricia Hopkins, the HR manager, mentioned during her presentation. Consultants, we basically keep that there in case we have to bring on somebody to help us with something. And I've used it both for my purposes over the last couple of years and to help other departments that needed to have consulting services. So that's kind of a pocket of money for unknowns.
Okay.
Gmail, and then SAM is a registration at the federal level. There is another account called Financial Accounting Services that has, and I might like to put that in here next year. What's in there? It's the auditors, the bank fees, our debt arbitrage company that reviews our debt for compliance with arbitrage laws. There's a lot of different financial services we're using that are sort of along these lines that are in a different account.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I'm going to hog a couple of seconds here. To help with recruiting, is it something that you're thinking about offering training to be a certified accountant, for advanced
So
training?
So that would be a part of our training budget, which is not in here. The consultant side would be something like you just said, if we needed a temporary to fill a slot on our staff, we might charge it to here. But on the training, that would be a decision of the individual. If they wanted to pursue training and try to get a certification, we would consider that. We typically don't pay for the education part. I'm sorry, the training. There's regular training, accounting training that we send people to. If you want to get a CPA, it's very extensive.
I know.
And the programs for studying that are very expensive. I'm not sure we could pay that out of our training budget.
Right.
We are initiating, go ahead. Okay, that's what we're initiating a citywide training program this next year to allow all employees to attend college, to get some kind of degree.
Yes.
The HR manager will be handling that from a mechanics, the administrative part of that program. But that would be also available for my employees to pursue anything like that.
Okay. And then here's my one big picture question. Ideally, your request for additional staff should be meeting a performance measure shortfall, if you will. Can you?
I kind of skipped over there. If you looked at that slide with the performance measure, we tucked in that room for improvement. As some of these things with the budget side, being able to better monitor spending, project spending, get you your quarterly reports timely, making sure that all the departments have everything in timely. That can be a budget function. And we definitely need another budget analyst to help do this. From the time, every year it's gotten a little better for Katie and I, and with Capri coming on, it really helped a lot, but still, this last 4 months, we're just completely worn out. There's just so many extra hours we have to put in, and we can help with that, and that will make things go more smoothly for the departments as well in the budget process, because it's hard to get things out early because we have so much information to funnel through just 2 people now.
I saw your cots downstairs.
Yeah, and I saw the lights burning. We still have some questions specific to the finance department, and then we'll continue on with the non-allocated, et cetera. So Alderwoman Finlayson.
My question has to do with risk management, and I see that our risk manager has left the room. But is there some sort of document that would indicate his findings for the year?
He accumulates data on a regular basis, and I can ask him what he has in that regard. And he tracks it over time, because I know there's some reporting that he has to do as well to agencies like OSHA, accident reports and those kind of things, and how many workers' comp claims we have and how many dollars we've paid out in workers' comp claims. He would have those, but I will have him gather that up. Do you want some kind of year-over-year comparison? What are you looking for?
Well, from year to year, from last year to this year, what are his projections?
All right.
So that we know what we're spending.
Yeah, okay.
And where our deficiencies are as far as risk management is concerned,
All
where
right.
the weaknesses are.
All right. He could speak to that.
My other question had to do with, I think we answered it when we were talking about the position we're going to put in DPW. I think that's it for my questions. Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I follow up on the risk management?
Absolutely.
And I do have another question, but yes.
Yep.
So risk management used to be more than just days and dollars. It used to be discovering we didn't have properly insulated batteries on buses and a lot of physical things like that. Who is doing that kind of
So
risk management?
that is Corey's responsibility as well.
They listen to
Here he
everything.
is. So he does those types of things. He's very active with the departments, and one of his focuses is worker safety. It's not just reactive after complaints have been filed or injuries have occurred. It is like, how do we make the workplace safer? Are we having trouble with driving records of people getting in accidents? What's the issue? He goes out to sites where things have occurred, and
We just called a friend. Here we go.
yep, phone a friend.
Corey Bradley, risk manager. So how can I didn't hear what how the conversation started.
The question is, the performance measures only speak to workers' comp claims and days of work. They don't speak to material things. When Mary O'Brien was our risk manager years ago, she discovered a problem with batteries in the buses that were causing fires. So there's physical things that also are going on, and we just heard from the finance director that you do look at those things, and that's why I was wondering, should there not be those kinds of things as a performance measure?
Correct. And I think there's a way to do it as a performance measure. When I was talking to Jody shortly before here, I think we kind of got to sit down and put our heads to, how do you measure what you don't know? Right? If you can't predict
what didn't happen.
But you can't predict every slip, trip, and fall. You can only put plans in place to prevent them. So how do you measure what hasn't occurred yet? But I think we can put our heads together. We've got some very smart people in the city. I think we can put our heads together and put something measurable for you guys so that we're able to say, hey, how we improved this year over last year. Very high level. Normally you put a count number to things, count or dollar amount, but sometimes that's not fair because, you could have one claim that could be, a couple $1,000s, and then you could have 10 claims that are all under $100. But I think we can put our heads together and come up with some type of benchmark for us to say, hey, we're improving.
Thank you.
I think we're looking for the trends.
Well, I think we're looking for outcomes rather than outputs. And so it is more like a goal measurement. What is our goal for having risk management, and how are we doing? But that's something we need to discuss more with the assistant city manager.
Yeah. There seems to be an incongruency with the increase of $1 million in self-insurance and then risk management. I can't comprehend why that is, but that's something I think we'll speak to.
Yeah, we can speak to that in a moment. I'll talk about the increase in that self-insurance reserve, and that was actually Corey assisting the Office of Law, going back through the claims and saying, these are costing us this amount. It looks like we need to reserve more for the claims that were out there.
Have some chocolate cake and stay for that.
I will definitely stay. You don't have chocolate cake, but yeah, when you start talking in self-insurance fund, while I do manage the claims, a lot of the decisions are occurring at the Office of Law, right?
Yes.
Generally speaking, for workers' comp and general liability, I will get it and kind of make the initial determination. I'm the first point of contact for, damage to a home, damage to a vehicle, workers' comp claim. But once we start going through the legal process and such, I defer to the Office of Law, and that's where those decisions are made as to what we're going to accept, what we're not going to accept. And that's what kind of is one of the bigger drivers for the self-insurance fund. Okay. So I'll let Jody go into her presentation. For what I'm aware, I can try to answer some questions.
Okay. We just have a few more questions on the department in itself. Alderwoman Pendle Charles, I think you were going.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I was just asking to follow on.
Just something real quick. I could have missed it. The capital outlay, maybe I missed it, 3,000 to 112.
Yeah, so we moved some items that were being shown in the contractual services line. We moved those down to capital outlay because they're costs for software.
Oh, okay.
So if you combine the two and look at the difference in the two, you'll have a better idea of a real fluctuation.
Okay, thank you.
So quickly, on page 6 on the team, thank you for putting the names in. It's always...
That's been asked, so we decided, Katie did that for me this year. We're trying to.
The name I don't see here is Kim.
So Kim is she up in there? There's a senior, oh no, we did, you're right. See that blue box right there? Where it says AR Senior Accountant? The bluish purplish box. You're right, I forgot to put her name in there. She's recently been moved to that position, but But she's still doing her current position because we don't have an accountant to take over her work.
But she's our main person. for
You're
all
right.
this,
She's the one that you see all the time. You're right. And that's my issue. Because it was blue, I think I missed that because that box was blue.
You can't leave Kim out. We would be sunk.
Yeah, I know. I'm going to get in trouble now. You made this a public issue now, right? Kim's gonna have my head when she comes back. Is she here?
If you're listening, we don't have the cake for you.
We be lost without
So,
Kim.
Yeah, she's our drill sergeant too. So
am I correct in seeing on this chart that there's 3 vacancies?
there's 1, 2, 3. Yes, we just filled a cashier position, and I put Katie's name in there. And then we have the 2 accountants and the senior accountant, and that's it, right? And then
Billing clerk.
oh yeah, the billing clerk because yeah. So yeah, I've got a billing clerk. Is it on there? It should be 1 vacancy. Yes, with Vanessa. We're moving Anna over to do another role, and so there's a vacancy there. So there's 4. And then another thing I was thinking of, we're trying to fill senior buyer, which is currently in my department, and we've taken applications for those as well. But it's not a part of the chart.
So 4 vacancies, but with the staffing chart on page 63 of the budget, you're going up 2 people, you're going up an accountant and an accountant, where is it, 2?
We're also, the grants administrator is
Okay.
leaving.
But then you're going down the grant, so your net number goes.
Is an
from
increase of
24
1,
21 to
which is the budget analyst that we're asking for there. The yellow budget analyst,
Okay,
the
right.
second budget analyst we're asking.
That's right. So
Okay.
the accountant and budget analyst. So those positions are funded in the mayor's budget?
Which ones?
The 2 new positions?
No, we've got the funding for the senior accountant. And we don't have the funding, well, it's in the 25 budget proposal for the budget analyst.
So the 2 new positions are both funded in the mayor's budget?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's what I
You're
needed to
still
know.
following the process that you presented to us a couple of years ago, where you were growing the department slowly based on different parameters.
Yes.
Okay.
Not slowly.
And it's been pretty consistent, except for the grants administrator, which we've now moved.
Okay. All right, so let's continue.
They still
done.
have 15 minutes.
Yeah, we'll continue.
Yeah. All right.
With the
Yeah.
interfund transfers, and this is important from a budget comprehension standpoint. You don't have to specific. Go for it.
The
Yeah.
non-allocated area of the finance budget is just all of those expenses that we incur in the general fund that don't fit within any department. One is the debt service on our bonds, and we have a control of that, and we pay those bills. That's a set amount based on our bond sales. And the increase there is just the natural increase in our debt levels that we're funding through the general fund. The community grants we just talked about, contributions to OPEB, that's for retiree health care. There's a general amount that I think there's some detail in your book right after the chart that shows what's in there. Some of it's for current retirees to help fund the employer portion of the city's portion of the retirees' health care. But there's also that piece that we're funding against the unfunded liability that we started doing when I started, when the city manager Teresa Sutherland set up. It was like $300,000 at that time, and we've been increasing it every year, going up to 350, 375, 400, I think we're at 475 now, or 450. It's climbing every year to address the unfunded liability from those who have already been working here, and we haven't set aside enough funds for them.
So is that, are you catching up? For lack of a
Yes,
word?
it's health, it's catching up is what it is. We're paying the current cost of current retirees that have left us. They're out there incurring healthcare costs. We pay those, plus we're putting extra money into our OPEB trust so that we can fund the future claims of the people that are still with us. And then we also put into the trust their withholdings and our contribution for active employees, we're putting that into the trust as well, but that's not what you're seeing here. What you're seeing here is the cash funding. Okay?
May I ask, how did you define the contingency again?
Are we there yet?
Or are we not there yet?
Okay, so, well, that's two items down. There's a couple of different
Okay, I'm
contingencies.
sorry, I don't want to jump ahead.
So on the self-insurance fund, we've talked about why that's increasing so substantially. When we went back over some of the claims, and as you know, we've had some general liability claims that are active right now, and even the defense of those, even if the Office of Law feels like we should be, our outcome is favorable there, we still have a cost trying to defend ourselves in those claims. So the Office of Law and Corey went through all of the claims and adjusted them accordingly, and then the result was an increase to the claims reserve, and so we sent that to the actuary, and the actuary comes out with how much we should be funding every year as a result. And so that's the reason for the increase. It's a bit of a catch-up item.
Yeah. Does it include premium increases because of the additional claims? Corey stood up.
Premiums
So our premiums aren't necessarily predicated on the claim. So
okay.
Our excess carrier for general liability is legit. Since I've been with the city, while we've opened claims with them as the excess carrier, they've never had to kick in.
Okay.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah.
But when we're setting reserves, you always want to set to the amount. Somebody's looking for X number of dollars. You always want to set to the amount up to what you would have to cover before it gets into excess, especially if they're asking for a number that's in the excess. So that's why some of those reserve numbers are as high as they are, and we're trying to do that. I believe Jody will explain. We're trying to do that over a 3 to 5 year period as opposed to taking the hit all at once.
Okay. I was going to call him Captain Kirk. No, city manager. Sorry, it was a little joke there. I'm going rogue here, but that's one consideration we need to do is this new position of pedestrian coordinator. Somehow it has to involve evaluating the safety of these sidewalks. I don't know how that can work out, but do you know what I mean? Aren't a lot of our claims pedestrian sidewalk related?
We get a fair number of claims, and
yeah.
I always joke that if you guys left it up to me, we'd have nothing but asphalt and concrete instead of the bricks. But yeah, we see a fair number of claims for trip and falls and other hazards in and around the city.
Okay.
Can we ask a quick
Yeah,
question?
let's ask as we go because these are complicated.
So what is our stop loss insurance, and how much does it cover specific in aggregate? What's the premium for
That
it?
was right. But we didn't spend it.
So
maybe-
our general liability insurance, we cover the first $1 million.
Considerably
Let me
less.
take out.
It's an excess carrier. We cover the first $1 million.
Right.
They're an excess carrier. They kick in over $1 million, but they cap at 5.
1 to 5, that's aggregate?
Correct.
And do we have specific coverage also?
Outside of that, that's just our general liability. We're self-insured for auto, for any vehicle under 100K. Any vehicle over 100K, we have auto insurance, but it's actually, we consider it property. Helps us keep our premium low. I insure, $500,000 fire trucks for less than you'd be able to insure your personal vehicle. Trying to think of all the other lines.
the boat and the
Yeah, so we've got insurance on about 12 vessels.
tanks.
We have pollution insurance. We have workers' comp insurance. That's the excess on that changes year after year. 5 years ago, excess workers' comp insurance kicked in at around $650,000. They've made us up it to about $850,000.
The coverage or the deductible?
The excess. So the excess in it. I don't know. So we don't pay this. Our premiums for that are set on a annual basis. So I don't have that figure with me. I can surely get you that, and like I said, some of those are just, they're looking at how the markets are. I will tell you, in the last 5 years for workers' comp excess, it's probably almost doubled. And some of that is some of the changes in law enforcement, changes in, things that have happened around the country, civil unrest, COVID claims. So there's a lot of drivers that kind of change.
The reason for the concern, and I'm surprised that we're capped at 5 million, because when we had the report from the Office of Law, we managed to deduct a $75 million personal liability. But we have two other big suits outstanding that are well in excess of 5 million. So we'll pay the first $1 million, they'll pay the next 4 million, and after that, if it's a $30 million suit, we're back on the hook. I mean, that's a huge liability for the city, and this set aside that we're doing here, which thank you for increasing this and having the actuaries look at it, kind of a drop in the bucket for some of these big suits. So I'm wondering if we're insured enough. Do we still do it with legit?
Correct, yes.
Yeah.
And that's just for general liability and property.
Yeah, so we can't get into this now, but I think this is something we really need to look at, because the suits we're getting are much larger now. And I think we are unprotected. And just imagine if we had to pony up. I mean, it was hard enough to come up with the settlement on the first HACA lawsuit, which was $900,000. If we had to come up with $10,000, $20,000, I don't know how we do that. So anyway, I think this is an issue we need to be thinking about.
Yeah. So if you could continue down the slide.
Okay.
We'll spend about a couple of minutes each slide. And
Yeah, so aside from that, we have our normal contingency. We have that every year. That's just a general contingency. Sometimes it's used for snow and bad weather. If we have excess snowstorms and we need to fund more in the snow for DPW, we use that in case something unexpected comes up that we need to, and we take that budget and we'll move it to the department that had the emergency. All right, and then we have the interfund transfers, and I believe your book has a list of what those interfund transfers are for, and most of them are related to the capital projects and the use of one-time reserves.
for the record, that's on page 15 of the budget book, and you do.
Page 65.
It's 65?
Oh, what's on page 15 then?
I don't know.
But it's on page 65.
65 of the budget book has a detail of what's in that interfund transfer number. It's several things: capital project, fleet replacement fund. We've increased that a little bit this year. And just some normal grant fund transfers. And rest is just capital projects.
Okay, I was just looking at the numbers on, am I right in saying some of these numbers are on page 15?
Oh, yeah, so some of the numbers that you see for those interfund transfers relate to the use of the reserves, the one-time and the capital reserve fund, and we delineate those individual items on that page. So you're right, there is a crossover there.
Question on this sheet, on this page?
I do have a question. Are you finished this page?
Yeah, I mean, there's that other category, but that's just a lot of miscellaneous things that we have to pay through here. Go ahead.
Okay, well, going back to the interfund transfers, the opioid money that came in, is that under this? I'm
Yeah,
seeing
that's
78,000.
the amount that we program for the general fund opioid program.
Okay, and then the housing, no, that's not the housing. The housing fund, trust fund, I guess it is. I'm looking for.
Yeah, so this year, there was an enhancement request from Planning and Zoning's Teresa Wellman to add some extra funding to her owner-occupied rehabilitation monies, because what she has is running out, and she wanted to seed that with some more funding before she left. And so she asked to put this in, to transfer it over to provide some monies to provide for owners who want to rehab their homes.
Okay, that's the 250,000. For seniors, I believe, or,
I don't know what the
in Great Neal.
qualifications are. I can't really
Yeah.
speak to that, if it's just seniors or if it's.
I've spoken to
Other
her a couple
criteria.
times about helping different people, so I think I'm happy to see that there's an
Okay.
increase there. Going back to community grants, can you account for, last year, I guess we budgeted, did we budget 348 or 370?
The proposed budget was 348,000 and the adopted was 370. I'm sorry.
next slide, it's in more
Okay.
detail.
And if you would like to see what makes up that number for this year, it's in Appendix E.
What I want to know is, the projected column went down to 225. So that's my question. What happened?
So I would say that projection probably needs to be updated. And I would have Vicki speak to, I think we're planning on liquidating the entire $370,000 budget, as long as everybody gets their reports in.
Well, and that was going to be my next point, because I've heard concerns about people saying they're not getting their checks, they hand in their reports, and, there's a missing piece here, so.
Yeah, no, I
wanted to know if that number represented the people who didn't get all of their money for whatever reason.
No, I think Jody's correct. That number, that projection probably needs to be updated.
Okay, so you'll get that to us so we can see the actual.
Well, yeah, and I think I can safely say you're probably spending most of your $370,000 budget. When we're looking at these, we're looking in January and we see progress to date. For something like this, we should probably zero in a little closer and ask the department, ask OCS, what are we paying out this year? But we don't always have the time to spend with every single line item, which is which is another argument for getting us another set of hands when we're going through this process.
If we looked at it at January, to see this number isn't surprising, because
Yeah.
it's halfway, and it's
Right.
more than halfway.
Well,
So-
we try to project it, so.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's just not a science. Sometimes you got to say, okay, we know that half of it's out, but it's all going to be gone by year end.
Okay. Thank you. Done.
Okay? So we can, let's, we kind of covered here. We can keep going. The health insurance.
I
go-
do want to talk about something. Oh, I do want to ask, I've been carrying around this article for like the last 2 months, bear with me. And the city, and I see Chief Jackson in the audience, and we'll talk about when police comes here, but this is DC, that they have 314 camera locations, and their revenue from January through June of 2023 was $3.8 million. So that tells me that these things, is, I know they have, people have opinions about them, but this is a source of revenue, these traffic cameras. So I saw here that you have traffic signal fees. Is that the same thing?
So what you're seeing is the fee that we pay the company who's monitoring the traffic signals. We have red light camera or cameras, and we have speed cameras, and I cannot tell you how, not very many, 1 or 2. There's not a lot in our, it's not as many as what you just said. There's only 1 or 2, and the police may be able to state where those are currently located.
Okay, we'll
But
talk about that with
the company that's monitoring it and sends out the picture of your plate and et cetera, collects the money. Those are the expense accounts that we pay those service companies through.
Yeah.
So that's what you're seeing there, the cost of monitoring and invoicing for those
Revenue there.
2 safety measures.
So the revenue we bring in presently.
It's in the revenue side. It's, if you look at your revenue detail, it's in the, I think it's in the.
We have 3 cameras?
So I'm not going to be able to speak to that. I know we had 2 at one time, and then I thought we had 1. Somebody told me we had reduced.
I'm going to give the chief a copy of this. 17 Washington DC cameras, let me repeat, 17 generated more than $1 million from January through June of 2023. Those are people going fast.
Well, and you really want that traffic I mean, because
this is deep.
So can I can direct you to page 22.
That one.
If you look at the revenue detail on page 22, we have a line for speed enforcement and auto traffic signals.
Well, I tell you, I'm going to ask for one on Duke of Gloucester, but that's a separate subject, and I apologize for that. But this really caught my eye.
Yeah, I mean, they are a revenue producer, but that's not the intention. The intention is to slow people down and not run red lights and cause accidents. But, they do come through with some revenue there, and we have a 200, maybe over 500,000 in revenues that comes in from those sources.
Okay. I called you Captain Kirk earlier just to make it. Go ahead, Mr. Malinoff.
Space Cadet Michael Malinoff reporting. The reason I wanted to comment is in prior iterations, I was involved in some of the discussions about the enabling legislation that the General Assembly provides local governments on where they can put red light cameras and speed cameras. And it's very limited. And that's one of the things you need to look at. Some of the communities, I think Baltimore City may, but Washington, D.C. and others aren't as limited. So you may want to take the issue that Alderwoman Finlayson brought up with the lobbyists and look at that direction next year. It does work. Statistically, it does slow people down. It does help. But we are very limited by the General Assembly.
Yeah, I mean, what I got from this is that people are speeding. Yeah. Anyway, sorry to digress, but looking for revenue. Where were we? Next. So I think we can go to the next slide.
Turn off. This is just a depiction of the health fund, and nothing major there. You see a bit of increase. As we know, healthcare costs are going up. This fund actually accumulates all the costs related to retirees and employees, and then we remove the retiree piece out and move it over to the OPEB fund. So this is a depiction. The actual column ends up being a lot less because we've taken out the expenses that relate to the retirees and moved them elsewhere.
So it's safe to say that the retirees are in the OPEC fund. And this.
Yeah, we record their expenses for healthcare in the OPEB fund. This is a depiction of the self-insurance fund. We just talked about the contributions earlier, and you can see the revenues increasing. That's reflective of that extra general fund contribution that's coming over that we just spoke of.
Yes.
So that's not revenue coming in from the employees. That's an additional contribution from the city.
Are you talking about the self-insurance fund or the health insurance fund?
Health insurance.
Okay, now we're back to. So what you see as revenues here is coming from the city and the employees. The withholdings from their paychecks get put over here, and our contribution gets put over here as well.
So we went from 7.8 to 12.5.
So what I'm saying is the actual column at the left, at the end of the year when we're doing our financial statements, we pull out everything related to retirees. We pull out the revenue related to the retirees and the expenses related to the retirees, and we move them to another fund. So when you see this fund, the actual results will always be a lot lower than the budget. The budget is set so that we can pay all the healthcare claims during the year, and we show all the revenues coming in because we have to have enough budget to pay for the healthcare claims.
So is there a slide that shows where that other 5 million went? I mean, you know where.
So yeah, we transfer it to the OPEB trust fund, and that is a separate fund, and there's no budget tied to that fund, so you won't see it in the budget book, but we can show you in your ACFR, there's an OPEB trust fund that's right alongside the pension trust fund, and it shows the revenues coming in and the expenses going out. So that's, at the end of the year, that net that you see goes to that fund. And I'll be glad to provide you a page number in
That would be
here to
great.
show that.
Okay.
Thank you.
So unlike other budget reviews, you allocate the revenue to accommodate the expenses.
Right. We want to show every dollar that leaves, we have to budget every dollar that's going to leave the city.
Right.
Here's where we budget the healthcare fund. We budget it all here. But at the end of the year, we want to take those pieces out.
This is actual.
Okay. Okay.
My phone is on.
So we budget the whole amount here so we can track what we're spending
Yeah.
and budget for what we're going to spend. And we show the revenue sources, both those coming in from retirees, those coming in from the city, those coming in from the employees. And then we show the total expense here. But the actual results are less because those expenses have been moved to another fund. And the revenue related to retirees have been moved to another fund.
I'm a little confused. But 23 actual is 9.4, and then it jumps up just the next year to 12.5.
No, so that FY '23 column
Yes?
is actual results.
Correct.
The budget that we set in this fund is high enough to accommodate both employees and retirees.
Okay.
The FY '23 actual column only has the employee piece.
Okay, you need an asterisk.
Yes, and
Well,
so
that's
this,
what I was.
Yeah, definitely need an asterisk.
if you read the note, the amount appropriated is based on analysis
Yeah, you
by
have
the
below
city's,
there.
there's a note down there
Yeah.
that Katie's,
Yeah.
I'm grateful to put that note in there because that kind of explains where we moved that, you know.
Are you expecting us to read below that?
It's okay, we're trying to help
But it's
because it
still
is
not-
an odd-looking table
still not
because of that.
What's that?
It is an odd-looking
Yeah.
fluctuation, and so we try to explain that in that note.
Okay.
But I think it would be helpful if there was a notation that said
Yeah.
the $5 million, or it's less than that, but is
So,
actually going here.
You
and this
mean
is where
put
you can
put
find
the
it.
amounts in that note, like how much revenues and how much expenses were related to the OPEB fund?
But what I was saying is it would be helpful if we saw that it would say the $5 million is being allocated
Okay,
to OPEB, and you can find that on page whatever it is in the
previous slide.
cap.
all right.
Yeah.
For our clarification, this makes perfect sense to you. To us, not so much.
Okay,
Thank you.
The next one, I think we talked about.
yeah, that's a self-insurance fund. We were going to talk about the sprinkler fund, which is next.
Oh, gosh, yes.
This is your sprinkler assistance fund.
How's that going?
Oh, okay, not a lot of activity, one or two. I think we have an active application right now, and we've done one loan so far this year. I told her she could go back downstairs.
Yeah.
We've had one or two this year, and one's in process. It's not picked up much from previous year, a little bit. I mean, we've had some more interest in it, I think, than.
I have to look at that ordinance, because we had a 5-year deadline, and we might be almost at that point.
I don't think, the ordinance that you initiated, I think that's probably got 3 more years left on
Oh,
it.
good. Okay,
The time limit for getting the sprinklers in.
so slowly but surely, we'll get those.
So, and I don't know who's putting them in at their own cost. There may be people doing
Yeah.
it that are not using our resources.
The fire marshal, in the city manager's interest, the fire marshal has been very helpful in walking through these owners and what they need to do, so thank you for that.
Okay. And so we're just anticipating some revenue coming in from the outstanding loans and giving us enough spending authority in '25 to spend the fund balance and the new revenues. Our budget changes, we've talked about a lot of these. Software's been moved from contractual services to capital outlay. We have a second budget analyst that we requested, and the grant administrator has moved to DPW. And that's it. I think we've exhausted a lot of questions, but there may be more here.
Yeah, no, I know, it's pros and cons of asking as we go. What's that?
So I think we need to stop questions.
Yeah, with respect to the police department.
Yeah.
We need to end, yeah, so, we have, some gifts for you,
Did we run out of time?
but we don't have them for everybody that left. Corey gets one. He stayed. Yeah, we have plenty of food. We're really trying to feed you. Because we're going to work through lunch, sort of. We're going to take a 5-minute break. Okay. We need another Starbucks run. Oh, dear.
Did you finish your coffee already?
Did you?
No.
Oh, my God. Finance Committee meeting, and we have the police department here. I'm going to have to establish some parameters since we're delayed. We have to give you more time, and we're hoping that we can be done no later than 1 at the latest, because we know we've got a lot of staff here that are taking their time from somewhere else, which is our public safety. So, and would like you to introduce yourself and who's in the audience as well.
Okay, I'll start off with myself. For the record, I'm Edward C. Jackson, Chief of Police for the City of Annapolis. To my immediate left is Captain Amy Miguez. She is the commander of administration. She handles all the administration for the Annapolis Police Department. To her immediate left is Captain Justin Klondis, and he is the commander of our uniform patrol forces. To my immediate right is Captain Lamar Howard. He is the captain of operations. He commands not only all of the detectives, and he's responsible for overseeing all of our detective work and plainclothes work. He's also responsible for community outreach. To his immediate right is somebody that's very important. Everybody's important, but she is responsible for a number of things. That's professional standards manager, Rhonda McCoy, and she's responsible for internal affairs, training, standards. She is appointed over Kalia to lead the Kalia team, and I can talk about that later on. And that's pretty much my staff. We have Craig in the back, and he is our accountant, retiree. He's here today, and he's a big part of crunching our numbers. Absent from the staff, because he has to have a procedure, is my deputy chief, Stan Branford. He was unable to be with us today, but I'm sure he's going to watch these proceedings. So I think I've covered everybody.
Oh, who's running it?
Oh, we can get started. I was waiting the
Oh, you're waiting
permission
for
to
me?
start. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, gosh, of course.
I'm sorry.
Of course you can start. I do have a request from my colleague, just to allocate time. He does want to spend some time on your variance on your contract services. Just FYI, when you get to that part.
Yes,
from
ma'am.
Last year. Yeah, okay.
And I'll start it off, and then in preparation for today, we all met last night on a Zoom call from our homes to talk about how we would approach this. So the way it's going to go is I'm going to give an overview, and there's be some things that I'll chime in on, and then the things that, any questions that you have in regards to any of my command staff up here, but they're over in charge of, they can give more detail. I have a good grasp of how my agency runs, but the day-to-day, many of these men and women sitting up here are experts in what they do, and so I would like for them to articulate, to show the council how your money is spent for this executive corps sitting up here that they're engaged to, if that's okay.
Very important.
Okay, and now to start, with our vision statement, and I don't have to read the whole thing, but it basically says that the Annapolis Police Department shall be an impartial and just partner to every citizen it serves, vigorously and constitutionally enforcing the law to protect its residents and others. We shall operate effectively, efficiently, ethically, and equitably, focused on community relationships. We shall exercise careful and faithful stewardship over the authority and economy given to us by the people. We shall earn and keep public trust, recognizing the department is more than merely a peacekeeping force. It will be a guide to those seeking pathways out of the criminal justice system, a helping hand to the homeless, hungry, mentally ill, and underprivileged. We shall be listeners to those seeking to be heard, and a beacon of Officer Safety and Wellness. And that's very important. We spent a lot of time putting this together and tweaking it because, you know, when you have a vision statement, it should be reflective of the programs that you actually have, not something that just sounds good at a hearing like this. And you can extrapolate our positive impact program, our relationship with Anne Arundel County public schools, you know, the food programs that we have in partnership with the Office of Emergency Management. So our community outreach, our movie nights with young people, you know, all of those things should be reflected in our vision statement. And we should be doing each and every one of these. And every citizen, every elected official, and every stakeholder from the mayor on down should be able to look at the Annapolis Police Department and see through our vision statement that we're doing everything that we said that we're doing. And that's my job as the chief of police, to make sure that we are accomplishing those things. Next one. We redid the organizational chart, and this was a collaborative effort. Everybody sitting at this table and my deputy chief, I wanted it more layered. We had a lot of acting roles, and so what we did was reconfigure it, and we did it by rank as a community, organizational chart should reflect. And it starts off with me, of course, as the chief of police, and then alongside that is my staff, Miguel Dennis and the PIO, we'll skip that one for right now. And, you know, my administrative, which you all know, Assistant Peggy, and who was that? The chaplains program, I'm sorry, and community outreach. They are direct reports to me. And of course, one step down is Major Stanley Branford, who is the deputy chief. And then he oversees the overall day-to-day operations. And then, of course, we have Justin Kleindes, who's here today, and he's responsible for patrol, and it shows his lieutenants. And alongside that is Captain Lamar Howard, and it shows what I just described that he does, our operations commander. And then it shows Amy Miguez, and that's the longest one, really. It shows you everything that you have to do, we ask you to do. But she does it with enthusiasm. And then we have Major Rhonda McCoy, and it shows, professional standards manager. I still call her Major from the old days. Rhonda McCoy, and it shows that she has internal affairs and training, and she has the PAB, the Police Accountability Board, and the Police Reform Act, and she's responsible for all of those things. And I don't think I left anything out. And I like to talk about this at some point. Sergeant Tanya Hernandez, we did something I think is pretty neat with her, and she's also going to be a big part of us correcting Kalia. Okay. Personnel, Office of the Police, Chief of Police. I have two sworn, and that's myself and the major. I should know that. Myself and the major, and then we have professional staff. I like the term professional staff better than civilian because many of the professional staff bring skills that we need to operate efficiently and effectively, and that would be people like Peggy, that all of you know, and you know, people like Miguel Dennis and others who are part of my immediate personal staff to help me oversee the day-to-day operations of the Annapolis Police Department. Then right next to that in the red block, you'll see sworn. We have patrol division, 58 sworn and 17 in this professional staff. Then we have the administrative division. We have 10 sworn and 24 professional staff. Then operations, 29 sworn and 11 professional staff. And professional standards, 11 sworn and professional staff. And I'm not shy, many of you heard me say this before, I like to see those numbers increase so that we can do more. That's my vision for the future.
So those don't marry up to your staffing chart, right? There's other people, right?
What do you mean by which, the staffing summary in the budget? Mm-hmm. There are some positions that are unfilled in that staffing summary, but they are funded.
Okay.
And then some of the So I was going to point out the professional staff in patrol, that 17 number, 16 of those are crossing guards. So things like that make it seem like there's a bunch of people. There's also, if you count up the number of sworn, there's 110.
110 and 63.
Now, technically, we actually have 113 officers right now, but 3 are in the police academy, so they are not technically sworn yet until they successfully complete the police academy.
Okay, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Okay. I think the
slide.
next one. Okay, fiscal year 2024 accomplishments. Number one, Annapolis Police Department responded to an unprecedented level of violence in our communities at the end of fiscal year 2023 and into 2024. Of course, we redistributed officer staffing to address the violence and created a special enforcement action team, which has been tremendous. And I'll have, in a second, I'll have the captain to weigh in on that. There's been 1 homicide in Annapolis so far this year and no other contact shootings. APD cleared 100% of the homicides committed during the current budget cycling, technology and other methods of the department budgeted to solve violent crimes and incidents. We vigorously investigate violent crimes, including shots fired incidents where no one was struck. And that's significant, that last part of that sentence. Many jurisdictions, nobody struck, they don't have the time, or they just don't investigate it because they felt that if nobody was harmed, then why waste the man hours? But we know that in the city of Annapolis, we want our city, the capital city, we want to send a strong message that every time an unlawful act occurs, we'll do our very best to mitigate that violent crime. Even if we're not successful in solving it, I want the council and the public to know that we take all discharging seriously, because we have to reinforce that it's unacceptable. So we do our very best to investigate all incidents of shots fired. And then, when we talk about homicides, we had an award ceremony 2 nights ago at the Bush Library, and it was emotional for me because I said this, and I'll say it here, you won't find better detectives anywhere, not just the state of Maryland, anywhere, than you find them in Annapolis. And I thank you, Captain Howard, for your leadership in that area and keeping the men and women motivated and engaged in wanting to solve these crimes. Mm-hmm. Of course, I'll say in addition to that slide, but we can advance it. 2023 was a very unusual year. We all know the very tragic events that occurred at the 1000 block of Paddington Place, where we had the mass shooting, 6 people shot, 3 were homicide victims. Of course, the person responsible for that is in custody and awaiting trial. That added to our numbers. That one incident, because we had 3 homicide victims, really caused our numbers to spike. I would argue that professionally, even as an expert, there was nothing that we could have prevented. It was interpersonal violence where the victim and the suspects knew each other, and unfortunately, a dispute over time escalated, and we saw the result of that. But we did a very good job in mitigating most of the homicides that we had in 2023. And even the ones where the couple that we didn't have an arrest, we have people of interest, and we're waiting for the courts to continue to work with us so that we can come and announce that those persons are going to be held accountable. Then number 3, the Annapolis Police Department's reentry program, Positive Impact, is what we call it, continues to reach at-risk members of Annapolis communities, providing them with opportunities, resources, and transportation to gain job skills. Many graduates are currently employed, and few have reoffended. I only know of 1 that reoffended out of all the graduates after graduating from the program. The program also assists people to enroll in a partner drug treatment program. And what I'm very proud, Robert Horn, I don't know how he does it, but to my God be the glory, he never turns down anybody. They don't have to be a returning citizen, they just have to be in need. And we do our very best to assist anybody who comes before us. Number 4, APD was awarded a $2.2 million state and federal grant funding to assist with crime and community initiatives, improve technology, and to purchase or improve equipment. The grant awards continue to be pivotal in engaging the community and gaining assistance in creating a safe environment, for Annapolis residents. That's number 4. Number 5, APD continues to collaborate with state and federal law enforcement agencies. APD partnerships with federal and state agencies has yielded significant benefits in removing violent offenders from the community, minimizing sales of illegal narcotics in Annapolis by seizing large quantity of drugs and monies during the budget cycle. I know that the public safety chair, I just want to say this real quickly. Back in March, I believe it was, late March, we at the Naval Academy gave us the opportunity to use their facility along with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives to have a forensic seminar, a handgun forensic seminar. Alderwoman Pendell Charles attended along with the state's attorney and many other dignitaries. And what we tried to do was to actually show the process when we have these discharges or contact shootings where we have a victim who was either shot and injured or a victim of homicide. We showed and demystified the process. We showed how the process really works and how we process gun evidence. We wanted to highlight the partnership between the APD and our federal partners, and it was really, really, the mayor was there. It was really, for me, career affirming. And I want to show that we need the federal partnerships, the state partnerships, anybody who can help us keep the city of Annapolis safe and hold people accountable who want to undermine the good order of our city. That seminar really highlighted the importance of having as much support as we can. And then I'll close that part of it by saying that we even articulated too, just small things, letting citizens know how important it is when you find shell casings, not to discard them. Let us know. If you see something, say something, let us know, because that one shell casing is like a fingerprint. No two guns fire alike in the world. When that hammer drops and hits that primer, it's significant to that gun. When it goes through the barrel, those lands and grooves and striation marks, I know I'm speaking a lot of technical jargon, but those are like your fingerprints or your DNA. And so that one shell casing, you don't have to have a forensic science degree to understand that process. So we talked about very complex things all the way down to the basic stuff, then had a demonstration right outside the Navy Marine Corps Stadium. So I'd like to have another one, and I would hope that the full council will attend the next one that we have, and we'll make sure that you're aware of that and invite you to do that. I don't know when that will be. We just had it a couple of weeks ago, but maybe we could do that again. And we talked about the Michelle Cummings case and how we use forensic evidence to help support a conviction for her killer. Accomplishments continue. APD is fully compliant with the Maryland Police Reform Act thanks to our professional standards manager, Major Rhonda McCoy. APD now has an inspections and audit unit and a sergeant in charge of the unit successfully completed Inspector General training. If you go back 5 years, one of the things I said that Annapolis was getting in their police chief was not only a career policeman, but a professor and an inspector general. I'm still certified through the associations of inspectors general at John Jay College in New York. I still maintain my certification. What we did because of the Kalia challenges that we had, we sent Sergeant Tanya Hernandez to Inspector General School, and she was taught how to do the proper inspections using GAGAS, and GAGAS is an acronym for Generally Accepted Government Auditing Standards, something that our professional standards manager is very familiar with. So now we have a trained APD staff under my certification to go out and do inspections for the entire department, but focusing on Kalia, but not limited to Kalia, focusing on the entire department to make sure that we're in compliance with everything that we have the authority over. And then Number 7, APD hired 9 officers so far this year, but we're anticipating losing 9 officers by the end of the year. I remember the last time that happened, we lost 18 and hired 18 for a net gain of even. But we're going to continue. APD continues to maximize limited resources to recruit new officers. We hired 10 officers in fiscal year 23.
That was the year we increased the career ladder salaries, right? 23?
That's correct. Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Okay.
And I believe it was a 19% raise.
Okay.
But so I'll turn that part of it over to you, Amy.
Yeah, that was one of the years that we had the increase, but we continue to lose people just at both ends. People who go to other departments instead of choosing us, people who come but then either decide to leave police work or go to another department that's offering better salary or benefits or bonuses. And then we also lose those that are retiring, and they are leaving earlier. With our 20-year retirement, they're either leaving at 20 or they're also able to leave at 17 with less benefit if they have military service. So we've had a couple leave at 17. So instead of waiting for the full benefit.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so this is the summary of our budget request. I just kind of put that there, but the next couple slides go into the increases and also how our breakdown works out overall for the budget. So obviously, salaries and benefits are a huge part of our budget. I know we're one of the largest or the largest city budget, but 88% of our budget is for salaries and benefits. So it's only that small little piece of the pie that is supposed to do everything else for the department. And we operate 24 hours a day, unlike other departments as well. So especially with all the costs that we have, understand we're a big part. So this is budget changes for the year. Our salaries and benefits, that's a big part of our increase, 1.9 million. A lot of that is not something that we control. We do have some new positions, which I'll get to in the enhancements. We have the salary increases for the crossing guards, which we are fully staffed now on crossing guards. Thankful for the increase to their salary. And then we have a couple camera monitor positions, CCTV monitor positions that we were allowed to add as well. Our contractual services increased by about 17 grand, but then we also had decreases in supplies and the capital outlay. As far as the contract services go, the increases are mainly related to our heating and electric bill. So the city gets the bills for all the city's electric costs, and they subdivide it by department, and everyone pays their share. So we have a increase for that. And we also had some other minor increases for that. Someone mentioned they had a question about that, but do you want to get into that now?
I think it would be more specific on our written document. I don't know if you're aware, we have a Google document of questions that we didn't get to.
Okay, do you want to do that at the end then, or?
Oh, you can do it on your own time unless anyone here.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
As far as the supplies and others, the main decrease for that was we had budgeted a bunch of equipment for our new motorcycles, for SWAT equipment, additional tasers we needed, medical kits. Those weren't reoccurring expenses, so that's why the decrease. And then for the capital outlay, we had a ventilation project for the range that should be completed in the first quarter of FY25, and also a carport project that was moved out of our budget. So that accounts for the decreases in supplies and capital outlay. So our budget enhancements for this fiscal year, we asked for 2 additional contractual CCTV monitors, which were approved. They're currently in the hiring process. They were approved before this current budget. The civil service conversion of our current CCTV monitor was approved. It had to be converted. He's at the limit for the contractual position. And then the crossing guard pay increases, which I mentioned were also approved prior to the budget. Those are all included in this year's budget. What is not included is a contractual full-time grant coordinator and a contractual full-time grant writer. So we wanted to speak to that. Currently, we have 1 federal, 5 state grants, and about 4 other grants that we get money through, usually through the health department. So it counts for $2.2 million in funds that we get through those grants. We talked earlier about the difference between capital grants and operating grants. These are all operating grants. They all have different reporting requirements. There's various different systems to log into to do the reporting. There's everything from like what grants pay for, salaries, benefits, equipment from bulletproof vests to, other equipment we need, 911 related equipment, officer training, pays for professional staff position salaries and benefits, not just officer salaries, dispatcher salaries, overtime for officers and professional staff, officer hiring and retention bonuses. We were able to get a grant to do some bonuses, bilingual bonus, gym membership reimbursement for our officers, tuition reimbursement, our community outreach programs, supplies that they need as well. We have a specific overtime grant for officers to serve outstanding warrants, to conduct alcohol and tobacco compliance checks, to do vehicle theft prevention outreach. It's various things that we have grants for, and it is a heavy burden for reporting. So like it says, currently 6 different people at APD manage these grants between them. And they're in all different departments they don't fall under one specific person. We have 1 part-time contractual grant writer, but a lot of these grants we end up writing ourselves as well. There's a lot of potential out there for grants that we could get that would benefit not just the officers, as far as when it comes to recruitment and retention, things that we could do to improve the way they do their job, but also for our residents and visitors to the city. Things like if we decided a drone program was something that the city wanted, that a grant program could fund that. Victim services, a grant program could fund that. But every time we look at getting a grant, it requires more reporting and it requires the writing portion. And it's a big burden on all of us that have a lot of other duties to get done that need to get done, so that we can make sure that the department is run efficiently and to the letter of our policy.
So just for clarity, those 2 are not in the fiscal year 2025 budget. They were around 300,000+. Okay.
Yeah, they are not.
They're in red. Okay.
Yes, ma'am, because, Madam Chair, Amy is absolutely right. She's right on the money. And I just want to add that when you look at grants, gone are the days just a few years ago, 15 years ago or so, when you could just get federal grants and you just spend the money and you had to show that you spent them. Now everything is evidence-based, and I'm not against that because it's the taxpayers' money. But now these reports have to be very comprehensive, very well written. And for example, the best example I can give you is one of our biggest topical issues in law enforcement, and that's handgun violence. We have to show, if we get say, for example, a $10 million grant to pay for investigators and equipment and technology, we have to be able to show the funders, the federal government, how effective our efforts were in meeting the mandates of the grant. Failure to do so could jeopardize us. So we need somebody who understands NIBRS, the National Incident-Based Reporting System, and knows how to characterize our law enforcement efforts. And so I've said in previous budget hearings that it's not enough to apply for these grants nowadays, law enforcement, anyway, I can only speak to law enforcement. You have to show evidence-based. It's different if you get a grant to fix the sidewalk. My good friend gave me that analogy yesterday. They don't track how many people walked on the sidewalk. But if you get a grant to say that you're going to seize handguns and target illegal handgun trigger pullers and organizations aim to undermine the law, and we get money and resources, millions of dollars in resources, then we have to, and as the agency head, I would be held accountable to make sure that I have the right people in place and the right bandwidth to manage those grants appropriately. So that was the purpose of wanting somebody who understands, that could be devoted strictly to the efforts of our enforcement in the Annapolis Police Department.
That's okay.
We were saving our questions to the end.
Yeah,
Yes,
so
you know.
I'd be happy to speak to revenue as far as cameras go here, since this is part of the budget. We're about to move into performance measures, so rather than circle back. We have 1 red light camera in the city of Annapolis and 5 speed cameras. We generate last fiscal year about, it was about 400,000 about. That's our net revenue from those cameras. There are specific guidelines in Maryland for where cameras can be located. It's based on proximities to schools. There's other restrictions, hills, like putting one at the Spa Road pumps by the city garage on that big hill where it goes down to 25 miles an hour, where we like to do radar enforcement. That's not a great location for a speed camera, even though there is that school right there. I think they are a good tool for traffic safety, to multiply the efforts to decrease accidents in areas where we see a lot of accidents. I would like to increase our use of cameras, making sure that we're very transparent about what we're doing, why we're doing it. I think there's a lot of potential. Forest Drive corridor, they're doing a lot of safety upgrades. We're working with Public Works to integrate some of our ideas with the plans that they have for that corridor. It takes time and it takes people. I'm the person who has to do that. There's no other person in the police department that's coordinating where the cameras go. The traffic safety officers approve the citations, so when they get the citations, when the picture's taken, it gets reviewed by a police officer. Now, there was a Maryland, there was a bill before I'm not sure how it's progressed this session. They were going to allow a non-sworn officer, a clerk, to approve these citations. We have to validate every citation. On average, our officers are validating 65 citations a day throughout the year.
Yeah.
So they go through and make sure everything matches. It takes time. It takes time for them where they're not out enforcing traffic or looking for traffic safety violations or helping with accident, response, for them to do that. So the more cameras we have, the more time it takes for them to review them. We were hopeful that this clerk solution might make it through the General Assembly, but I'm sure that Vicki is looking it up right now.
Okay.
like I said, I like it for traffic safety. I consider that we have a greater need, especially for like red light cameras on some of our intersections. Certainly speed concerns, even if they are areas where we don't have studies that back up that there's a lot of violations. The complaints that we get generate our activity to go out there and do enforcement. If we put a camera there, it frees up us to say, we have a camera there. We're not going to send someone out, necessarily as often to that area. Like you said, Duke of Gloucester, the speed studies show that there's not a lot of speeding that goes on Duke of Gloucester. For us to post someone there for long periods of time. But if we put a camera there, that might help.
Well, offline, can we talk about pursuing that? Did I mention this article that I read? Because ultimately, it would, it would pay for 2 police officers, though. Really, Vicki, okay? City manager? Can we look at that? Yeah, okay, we'll look at that.
Okay.
And I'll have Captain Howard to talk about the performance measures in terms of our index crime.
Good morning. So as we look at this slide as it relates to the Part 1 crimes from fiscal year 20, fiscal year 23, and fiscal year 24, going through quarter 3, the slide tells half of the story. It gives you a raw number of the number of incidents that we experienced, especially in 2023 during the summer. We ended up going through 3 iterations of our crime plan to stop bullets from flying and to stop people from dying. The story that this slide doesn't tell is the countless number of man hours that were spent in the individual neighborhoods and the countless number of man hours spent by the investigators closing these cases. 2023, it was a tumultuous year. We know that the chief gave us a mandate to get a crime plan in place that would work so that we could stop people from dying and being shot. 2023, quarter 3, coming into 2024, you see the injection of SEAT, which is a discretionary unit that's not tied down by the radio. So they have the autonomy to go out and to remove the most violent persons from our communities to keep the city safe. So as you can see on the decline, pretty much in every major category, especially with the homicides and the contact shootings. The rapes, most of those incidents are familial. So even though we haven't closed all of them, we have either a person of interest identified or there's a warrant that's outstanding for the suspect. Some of these suspects are no longer in this jurisdiction. Some are not even in the country. But nevertheless, there's an active warrant for those individuals that committed these heinous crimes. So as you're going down to the robberies, the aggravated assaults, the burglaries, the larcenies, and the motor vehicle thefts, you can see the drop-off from the numbers that we were experiencing in 2023. And that's because of the crime plan that the chief mandated that we put into place, as well as injecting some adrenaline into that crime fight, utilizing SEAT to cut these numbers to where they are now. And we're hopeful as we continue to go throughout 2024 that we can continue to build off those successes that we're seeing right now.
And I'll just add to that. Thank you, Captain. It's very good. And what I'll add to that is what you're looking up at performance measures, that's still the old uniform crime reporting system. We since transitioned from the UCR to the National incident-based reporting system, commonly referred to as NIBRS. And it's going to take us a couple of more years. Is that a good assessment? It's going to take us really a couple of more years to take the nation, not just Annapolis. This is a federal system. It's going to take the nation a couple of more years because we've used the Uniform Crime Report since 1930, almost 100 years, and that's how the federal government calculated crime. Now the federal government takes NIBRS. NIBRS, the difference between NIBRS and UCR, NIBRS, your crime's going to go up because under the UCR, we had a hierarchy rule. In other words, a quick example would be if you had a murder, say a woman was abducted, she was raped, she was robbed, and ultimately murdered. Under the old UCR, it only counted the murder. It counted the most serious crime, didn't count the subsequent crime. So that wasn't inaccurate. The federal government decided, and I agree, scholars and researchers decided that that wasn't an accurate depiction of the real crime. So now we count all the crimes encapsulated in that one incident. And so it appears that our numbers went up. They didn't go up as significantly as the data reflects. It just shows now under NIBRS that we have to count everything. One incident, if a person was a victim of 5 separate and distinct crimes, we had to count all 5 of those crimes instead of one. In the old days, we only counted the most serious crime.
So let me just understand this. We're not really apples to apples in these columns then, or did you fix them so that we are apples to apples?
We fixed them. It's fairly accurate, but I just wanted to reflect and piggyback on what the captain talked about. And I think where I'm so proud and impressed with my own people is that we were still able to mitigate some of those numbers down, even though the fact
you had to split them up.
Yes, ma'am, because we're counting everything now, not just the most serious incident. And yet, what the captain was articulating a few minutes ago, that we were able to bring these numbers down, even though we're counting more crimes in those single incidents, and which is pretty impressive by anybody's standards. And so I'm very proud of the APD for their efforts, and Captain Howard and his men and women for the efforts that they're putting into these investigations.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So this chart, again, let me back up. So some of the previous slides we were talking about grants. So we're currently operating under a grant now to serve arrest warrants. We've used those arrest warrants as a vehicle to go after the most heinous individuals in this community. We've been able to apprehend them on those open warrants, and the sweetener was that once we put handcuffs on them, they happen to be armed with handguns. So being able to take those individuals off and potentially these individuals qualifying for federal prosecution, it showed that the individuals that we knew were causing the problems in our communities were also responsible for other crimes. So when you look at the robberies, when you look at the aggravated assaults, you look at the burglaries, breaking into people's houses, stealing handguns, stealing cars so they can remain undetected doing other crimes, it shows that when we have that type of support, especially with the grants and the funding to put people in certain places and take certain individuals from these communities, you see the decline that we're experiencing right now. So that grant, what Professional Standards, Ms. McCoy, what she authored, has been instrumental, very instrumental in the numbers that we're seeing now in safeguarding this community. So again, so I'll go back. So we're looking at fiscal year 24, we had 1 homicide. And to the chief's point, one of the mandates that he gave me was to strengthen the relationships with our federal partners. The 1 homicide that we had ties to Baltimore. This entire incident occurred in Baltimore. They bring him here to Annapolis, they assassinate him, and they leave him here in Annapolis. Had we not had those relationships with our federal partners, we would not have closed that incident as fast as we had. There was no way that we could have created that timeline because, 1, we didn't have the resources and we didn't have the technology. But strengthening those relationships with our federal partners have paid dividends in keeping Annapolis safe. So I think, to the chief's point, that's very important. It's very important that we continue to build off of that. if we want to see the success that we're seeing right now.
So just so I understand the slide, if it's, I think what you're saying in layperson's, if you've got somebody handcuffed for aggravated assault, all right, do you know that that person has committed other crimes and you're connecting the dots to get him or her on all three? Or are you just saying that you're preventing that person from doing other crimes? So I kind of lost you there.
All of the above, because if you have an individual that's wanted on a warrant, he's wanted on, like you said, an aggravated assault warrant, and he's armed with a handgun and he's prohibited, that in itself helps us remove that individual and sit him down, and then we can go back and look at the other incidents, particularly the ones where we have witnesses cooperating with those particular incidents, and or a good description to where we can go back and closely monitor the CCTV surveillance of that particular incident, and we can connect the dots.
Yep.
We connect the dots. We work backwards once those persons are in custody. Once they're in custody, we've seen the folks want to partner with the APD because now they know that the individuals that has been responsible for most of these incidents can no longer touch them.
That's right. And Alderwoman, here's something else. Under Project Exile, if an individual gets caught with a round of ammunition, one bullet, and they are prohibitive individuals, 5 years under the federal law, and that's why we use them. And that really has happened. For example, a person who's been convicted of a violent crime, who the federal courts say you're not to ever, for the rest of your natural life, be in possession of a gun in your home, on your person, not handle anything that has to do with firearms. One bullet or a round of ammunition is the more appropriate way to say it. One round of ammunition could get you 5 years under that federal partnership. So we use the federal partnership. You know, individuals sometimes laugh and take state court as a joke, but they don't laugh when they're walking down federal court. I've never seen one defendant ever laugh and engage in acts of buffoonery when they're walking down federal court, because when you get convicted in federal court, you have to do about 87% of your time. So, you know, if you calculate, I'm not a math major, but if you calculate 7% of 40 years, the answer is most of it. And so, and the individuals know that out on the street. Offenders know that, you know, so I just wanted to kind of talk about that. Sure.
I just wanted to reiterate the importance of the grants, because that warrant, as Captain Howard said, that comes from a state grant that we applied for. So I had to write the grant, I coordinated the grant, I now manage the grant, and as you can see, I'm professional standards and he is operations. And this is outside of my area of responsibility. However, we needed that grant. And so someone had to do it. And that's one of the grants that I managed, like these 6 people that we talk about that have to manage all these. And it has to be someone who knows law enforcement. If it's managed by anybody else, I'm still doing the work, because the only thing you're going to do is call me and sit me down for hours and say, hey, can you tell me about this? Can you tell me about this? Can you tell me about that? So a centralized system will not work in this instance. It has to be somebody who is familiar with law enforcement, as the chief says, knows the NIVER system, knows law enforcement procedure, policy, to write the grant and then manage it over, because those questions, it's a lot. It takes a whole portion out of my day when we have to report. I have to sit down and devote a whole day just to report out.
Thank you. Is that you? That's your bailiwick. Yeah, we'll have.
Good morning. So one of the things that we always get asked a lot, and one of the things that we take very seriously is how quickly do we respond to calls from the residents? As you can imagine, we get all varieties of calls that come to us, some higher priority than others, but we still take every single one of them very serious. And I'm proud to say that traditionally the national average for a critical incident is about 3 minutes across the country. That's about the standard response you're going to get with lights and sirens in an emergency situation. And all of our priority calls, for the most part, are below that national average or right about that national average for all of our priority calls. When we think about the other calls for service, my car got hit last week, or I have some property damage, destruction on property, the non-emergency calls, when you look at the splits, we're really not that far off from the higher priority calls. Some of that takes into consideration our telephone reporting calls, where you don't necessarily need an officer to come to your house to investigate whatever, it might just be a question, it may be a civil issue that can be explained to you over the phone. So a lot of times our citizens will call us and say, they don't need to come here, I just need a phone call. And the officer can call them right from the vehicle and answer whatever question. So that is going to play into kind of a response time. If I can call you right away, 2 seconds after getting the dispatch, my response time is really not 2 seconds, to the call.
Do these include non-emergency and emergency calls?
Yeah, so it's if you look at the top line is priority calls, that's our emergency calls, and all other calls is going to be everything that's not a lights and siren response, not an emergency response. So, we're literally within about a minute or two of each. So we have really good response times in the cities, anywhere under, I think our highest is about 5 minutes and 7 seconds in November of, I think that was Q2. That's with the amount of traffic we have, especially, through summer, everything increases with tourism. When we get into the busier times of the year, May with commissioning week, and all the parades that start coming around in spring, the influx of tourism obviously increases in the 7.2 square miles that is the city of Annapolis. So with all the added infrastructure, the lights and everything that's going on, we have excellent response times for this agency.
So this is the National Community Survey response to overall feeling of safety in Annapolis. So everyone who responded either good or excellent, that was 54% of the respondents. So that we were using that as one of our performance measures for this year.
We're just giddy that you looked at that. That's all. Right? Aren't you?
I have to give props to Vicky.
Yeah. We should have awards. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And then our final performance measure has to do with internal and external compliance and certification inspections. So the CALEA, the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies. So we were accredited through February of this year. However, in March, our accreditation was suspended.
And we still are members of CALEA. That hasn't changed. Our CALEA designation hasn't been revoked. I sent a letter to all the council previous to this meeting with the city manager's blessing. I wanted to craft my own letter explaining our challenges. I want to go on the record. Back when after the Paddington Place homicide and the discharges, I brought the command staff, everybody at this table, and Stan Branford, which I rarely do, and I said that everybody with a gun and badge is going out on the street. Everybody. Chief, well, we have CALEA, we have this, I've said put everything down, because I'll never apologize for doing what my oath calls for me to do. Even more important than CALEA is the preservation of life and community violence. We will get back to being accredited in CALEA. We really will. CALEA doesn't affect our ability to go out and enforce the law or carry a handgun. if people think that, they're misunderstanding what CALEA is about. CALEA is voluntary. It's just a gold standard to show that we are committed to the best practices, and we still are. What that slide doesn't reflect is that I got on an airplane and I flew March 22nd to be exact. I left the morning of March 22nd. I flew down to Montgomery, Alabama, and I testified before the commission, and I articulated it to them, and I have proof of all of this. I got off the plane, went to the conference, and I testified before the commission, before our committee and the full commission, and told them about our challenges in the city of Annapolis, the mass shooting on Paddington, the number of discharges on Madison and President and Tyler Avenue and Clay Street and Oberry Court, you name it. And so I had to make the decision to have everybody who had the authority to enforce the law to put down those administrative duties and get out on the street and help us to stabilize these communities. Literally, I told the professional standards manager, even CALEA, put everything down. I accept full responsibility. That's leadership. You all appointed me to be a leader. And so I made the leadership decision to say that if it happens again, I'll do the same thing. Put everything down, and the preservation of life remains our highest priority. And so where we at with CALEA, we went from being 79 standards down. We got that reconciled down to 9. In other words, the CALEA process, real quickly, I know time is of the essence. We have to have standards. They give us the standards. We have to make sure that our policy reflects those standards. Then we have to prove that those standards are being adhered to or complied with. We mitigated it from 79, in other words, completed 70 of them. We had 9 left. And of those 9, we had a couple of things which I can talk about offline that really was outside of our ability to reconcile, dealing with the building and other things that we don't control. I think it was a job description that they wanted from us, and we don't control job descriptions. That comes from HR. And so we let CALEA know that we don't have the authority over those kind of things, because many of these are civil service positions that fall under HR. But more importantly, what I really want to say today, so that I don't forget, we talked about this last night as a group. Every single policy and every single mandate set forth by CALEA, we've reconciled all of it. And I went down there and I told them, I said, I'm not here to try to get you to reverse your decision. What I want CALEA to understand is that we reconciled everything that you mandated us to do. We just didn't get it in the time that you all wanted it, because we were trying to put all of our resources out on the street to protect the city. I said, but I'm not here to, I'm not a fan of CALEA to meet the mandates and walk around and wear the pendant they give you when you're in compliance. I'm here because I want our general orders, our policies, our procedures to be the best, and that's what CALEA does. And our policies and procedures, all of them that they ask us to reconcile, have been reconciled. In other words, if you come into the Annapolis Police Department, all of our policies and procedures are in compliance with CALEA standards. It's just that we just didn't get them in the designated time, because last summer we put all of that to the side to formulate the special enforcement action team and to have a presence in these neighborhoods. So I didn't want that to be the elephant in the room. We will come back into compliance very soon in CALEA. I'll come back before you. And if you looked at my letter, I said I would sit down with every council person who wants to sit down, and we can go over everything that needs to be gone over to show that everything that we're doing is transparent. I'm proud of what we did. I love CALEA, but I love the preservation of life more. Thank you.
Okay, we have questions. I'll go first. I have four questions. Hopefully the answers will be brief. I still don't know exactly, because of the same staff count, I don't know what the staff salary increase is. I'm not clear on what that add is in salaries, being that our budget book on page 73 shows a reduction actually in one person, which is the warrant control clerk. But then when I look, and I have a feeling, I think I know what this is, but when I look at the salary increase, it's substantial, as you said. So I remember a couple of years ago, we added staff with a grant, I think. So are we losing a grant in staff allocation? No, okay. Do we have any grants supporting staff? I guess is the first
We do. We do have a grant that supports staff. We do have one person who's currently supported by a grant that we plan on moving into a position that is already funded.
Okay,
That was funded this year and funded next year.
okay. I think it had something to do with the state, adhering to the state law a couple of years ago. I see Rhonda nodding her head. So again, what is the increase in salaries and benefits? Because does anyone?
I don't know if Jody might be better to
Yeah, okay.
answer, or you got it?
Yeah, budget manager Connolly.
Budget Manager Conley, so if you're looking at 24 adopted numbers versus 25 proposed numbers,
Yes.
part of that, so we have salary increases annually, right? But part of that, is also, there were some 24 additions of personnel after the budget adoption of 24. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We've got about 7 positions. And then there's also the rate increase for crossing guards that was not in 24 adopted, and the 3 camera monitors that were added as well.
So how come they're not reflected on page 73?
So if you look,
maybe
if you look at the budget book from 24, that was adopted. So last year's budget book, right? And you look at, right, and you look at this year. So what we're reflecting in that staffing summary is the snapshot of 24 as it exists at a certain particular point in time.
Okay.
So that's reflective of those ads that they had in between the adoption of 24 back in, June of last year till probably December or January of this year.
So when we did the ladder, for lack of a better word, the ladder increase of, what was the percentage? 19%. That wasn't all in 1 year. Is that, it's graduated, so does that, this isn't reflected here? No, that was just a one jump. Are you clear on what the ad is?
So I think the 19% was over 2 years, but most of it was in the first year.
Okay, okay.
Because there was
17.
I'm trying to think, there was a jump in the starting pay from 23 to 24. But most of that increase was 17, I think I heard over here, like 17.12% the first year.
Okay. Oh, gosh, first, let me apologize. This is really difficult to put your efforts in some kind of financial framework. I mean, we're talking about human lives, saving human lives, and also your lives are. And so just bear with us. This is what we're tasked to do. Not in order of priority. The second question is, where are the motorcycles? And what are they for?
We had Harley Davidson motorcycles, which are probably, I don't know if they were older than me, but they were pretty old. And so they're used by our traffic unit, but also for escorts, for the parade, for doing traffic enforcement. So we have, there's equipment that they need to be outfitted, not only what the officers wear when they're riding a motorcycle, but then, different equipment to put on the motorcycle. So I have a photo of the motorcycle if you want to see it.
So they're in, are they in supplies and other, or?
Well, so the equipment that we bought was in supplies and other.
Okay.
The vehicles stay under fleet. The actual purchase of the motorcycle, it goes under the fleet budget, not in our department. It goes under Public Works.
So
all our fleet buying vehicles goes through Public Works, through their fleet budget.
So we'll make a
So when they ask for vehicles, they're not just asking for them, they're asking for all the departments throughout the city.
Two more questions. Do you still have safe stations, or are those with the fire department? I forgot to ask the fire department for that. Or
Safe stations is just a designation that means that any police department or fire station in the city and county you can go to if you have someone in crisis who wants treatment. So those still exist. Anyone can go anytime.
No questions asked kind of thing. Okay. With the status of Kalia, will that will that impact any grant applications, grant considerations? No,
ma'am.
risk.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I think because CLIA is very prestigious, and again, I want the designation back ASAP. But it doesn't impact anything. It's just internal. It's just you can have CLIA or you not. But it won't impact litigation. I've been asked all these questions. That's the only reason why I'm rattling all of these off. It's not, I assure you, there's not one thing that adversely affects us other than we have to wait a couple months before we get the designation in compliance back.
So one performance measure you don't have, what would be interesting to see, especially for management purposes, is your detective time in solving these cases. We'd be curious to see what that.
And although it was interesting, because I went down to Montgomery, Alabama to testify, and they sent a couple of emails to me. I had more sympathizers because I talked to a lot of chiefs down there and said, that's an awkward situation to be in, but I would have done the same thing. And that's the honest to God's truth. And many of them said, I would have done the same thing. I mean, you got to preserve life first. And I'm not saying that's the only reason, but there were a lot of challenges that we just had last year. But a big reason, last summer, we could have worked on CLIA. But once the violence went down and the numbers showed that these communities are stabilized, we went back to CLIA. And under Ms. McCoy's leadership, we reconciled, was it 49 in a couple of weeks? Actually had the proofs and the standards, had all and they worked. I paid overtime, but that was only after the numbers showed that, and we got a couple of the trigger pullers that we had gotten on video off the street, and then we went back to doing CLIA stuff.
So to your question about detective time spent, so what do you want to get at with that number?
Well, I think it's improving, and I just think.
Oh, you mean that the quicker they solve it, the better? Or no, I'm just trying to.
I'm trying to think of what story I want to tell there, Vicki, but it just seems you're doing.
That's what I think. I think of Vicki's voice in my head.
Yeah.
The problem is sometimes is that, our detectives usually focus on the most serious cases when push comes to shove, when the things are busy, when there's a lot of cases.
Yeah.
So I don't know that.
That would be helpful.
If we're measuring the amount of time they spend investigating a serious crime.
Yeah, and there are a few other factors that influence the amount of time spent on a case that really have a lot more to do with what are the expectations of the criminal justice system in general and juries in general and technology. The impact of body-worn cameras, for example, I know has been very significant on time to work
just
on
cameras in general.
Yeah, cameras
reviewing
in general.
Any footage that we have. When you look at a crime like an unfortunate murder that happened, the Navy mom, the amount of cameras that were recovered, just because of where it occurred, and they all have to be reviewed because what if they show something that we didn't see? So
yeah, I was just trying to align with something that the chief always ingrained in me since he first started, which was, you're going to commit a crime and we're going to get you.
Yes, ma'am. And we still mean that.
Yeah, we do. And so I was just trying to relate.
And to that point,
performance measure to that, but.
Well, and actually that is part of what's there in the performance measure, which is clearance by arrest, which is around, regardless of how long it took you, did you close that not through an administrative process or anything else, but did you close it because you actually arrested someone?
Okay, that's good. Okay, all right. My colleagues definitely have questions. Well, and one more thing we want to add from the chief about operations.
So before we even get to the body-worn camera and the CCTV camera footage of these investigations, solving homicides and shootings is not an easy task. They're independent of one another. So from the moment that, the investigator receives a call out and you get to the crime scene, you're trying to manage a crime scene, ensuring that the crime scene, one, is safe, and then second, to ensure that you preserve it to where all of the evidence involving that particular incident is made safe and also collected for adjudication. So it depends. This last homicide that we had for 24, again, I'll keep harping on it. Had it not been for those relationships with our federal partners, we might still be investigating this particular homicide, especially when it comes to creating timelines when you don't have a witness real time to tell you this is what happened.
Right.
So they're independent of one another. But to everyone's point, it all points in the right direction as it relates to performance measures and things of that nature, getting back to Kalia.
Right, and I was just add in closing, there's no standard time. Each case has to process the evidence on its own merit. And so, to do a good investigation, you have to make sure that you apply the 6 interrogatories to be answered, the who, what, when, where, how, and why. And that's no cookie cutter approach to that process. To clear crime, generally the UCR defines a clearance as the person in custody, arrested. To solve the crime means you have a suspect identified and a warrant has been written, but they could still be out there. So we don't celebrate until we get them off the street, because as long as they're out there, they can reoffend and continue their criminal, rampage. So I just want to make that a part of it. So we measure our performance standards by 2 fundamental things: the ability to identify a suspect, and then a strategy with our partners to apprehend them once we have a warrant for their arrest.
Okay. Thank you. Alderman Finlayson?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Chief, Captain, how many officers are you funded for currently as of the 24 budget?
124.
124. And by my numbers, you are staffed currently at 107?
We have 113.
113?
Yeah.
Okay. How are we doing as far as recruiting? I know you mentioned, you hire 8, you
9,
lose,
yeah.
You hire 9, you lose 8. And, you do have a growing or an aging workforce. I know, I'm trying to put this mildly, but the reality is that people age out. I mean, you know what I mean. So what are we doing to get to, one, the younger folks that we need to bring in and to recruit, period, and especially from the Annapolis area?
Right. So we've got a couple of great cadets, and we'd welcome more. We have officers that serve now that were cadets, including Captain Kleindienst. But we have others too that are lower ranked. We just graduated 3 female police officers from Police Academy. They're continuing their GAP training, and they'll be hitting the street for field training very soon. We have 3 others already in field training who are lateral officers from other agencies. We're continuing to get a mixture of lateral officers from other agencies and new hires. Obviously, the new hires take a lot longer to get up to speed. We just had 3 that started the academy last month, so it'll be another 8 months or so until they graduate, and then they'll start their practical training. We are going out to a lot of recruitment events. So we've gone to a lot of the local schools to try and they have a lot of events about careers and things like that, that we get kids interested when they're young, then we can get them in as cadets when they're older, and then have them start with us right away if that's an interest they have. We've have partnerships with the high school. We have a couple 18-year-olds doing ride-alongs soon with officers from the high school. So we're really hoping, that sparks an interest in those kids. We also go to a lot of the local colleges. So there was just a big employment fair at Bowie State, and we were out there. We do that all the time. So we're continuing to do things like that. It's paying off. It's just that we are losing people. So we have pretty much only one that we're expecting this year is someone who is not retirement eligible, who may lateral to a different agency. But all the rest that we are expecting to lose are all retirements.
And I'll tell you a funny story. I was in Wendy's last week to get a hamburger. I was hungry. When I rolled up to the
Please
drive-thru,
don't talk about food, Chief.
this very handsome young man waited on me. I said, "How old are you, young man?" And he said, "I was 23. I am 23. This was last week. Me and Stan were together. We said, "Well, I'm not trying to take you away from Wendy's, but we could sure use a young man like you in the Annapolis Police Department." Mm-hmm. Well, I'm happy to say that when he's applying, and so we all have a responsibility to recruit. And then I saw a young lady in P.F. Chang's that mentioned Smichael's name. I said, "How old are you?" True story. We was in P.F. Chang's. She said, "I'm 21. I said, "Good, you're the right age." And so I gave her my card and I said, "We need you." I said, "I like P.F. Chang's, that's why I'm here, but we need you in Annapolis." So she said she would think about it because she knows Smichael. So I told Smichael to work on her.
So, and another thing he brought to mind was interns. So we do a lot of work with different colleges, and so we get interns in. And again, we've had success with some of them becoming officers, but also other professional staff that we have. So
the other day, we had a woman in the station who was doing an internship with us. And I said, "Tell me something about yourself." I said, "You working your associate's degree?" She said, "Yes, sir." Honest to God's true story. I said, "Well, that's good." I said, "Well, when you finish your associate's degree, we're hiring in the APD." And she looked at me and she says, "Well, I'll think about it." So I said, "Well, just tell me a little bit about yourself." So she says, "Well, I'm a graduate of the Air Force Academy and I have a master's degree in business administration, and I'm just wanting to do an AA in law enforcement, and I'm a retired colonel from the Air Force." I didn't let out of my office. I said, please. So she said she would think about it. I would love to have a retired officer, Air Force officer at the rank of colonel to join the APD. She's doing an internship now. She should be in the station now doing an internship. She's graduating to get her AA degree. I don't know where from, maybe Anne Arundel Community College. So I say that I want a more formalized recruitment effort, but I think that all of us have a responsibility to do it in a very folksy way. When you see young people out on the street, you just have to engage them, and I'm trying to show the lead by doing exactly that.
Is the internship that she's doing related to her graduate degree?
Associate's
degree.
Yeah, she already has a graduate.
Right, but
she's just doing the associate.
Directly
She's getting
related
in criminal justice. Yes,
okay,
ma'am.
she may be serious.
I pray so, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm glad to hear that we have cadets coming up. We know that they will stay because they've been kind of brought up under, the tutelage of the department. So that's awesome. My next question has to do with the grant writer and coordinator position. Now, we just had this discussion in finance about the grant writer that's going to Public Works. And I understood, and Ms. Dickinson, correct me if I'm wrong, that every department has their own grant writer. And where is APD's?
we have a part-time grant writer. He doesn't work out of the department. It's you contact him, he writes the grant. He's not law enforcement specific. So it's kind of a, it could be our problem with who we have, but with the kind of position it is, it's not a highly desirable necessarily one to get. And so we have to end up doing a lot of education about what departments do and what we do and what kind of data we can show and what our programs are. And it's a lot of heavy lifting on our part, which I'm sure Ms. McCoy can speak to.
Well, it sounds like you're doing okay bringing in $2.2 million.
There's a lot more out there.
Okay. Ms. Dickinson, do we recognize a grant writer in each department? I mean, that's what we were just talking about during the last segment.
So there's two different roles. The writer Sorry. There's two different roles, grant writing, which is seeking the money, and then the reporting and administrating related to a grant that's been given to us. Those are typically two separate roles. I can't answer to which ones specifically have a grant writer position. I don't even, yours is not a civil service, is it?
No, it's contractual.
Yeah, contractual part-time person that they've hired to help with that effort. So I don't believe that, and I'm trying to speak off the top of my head here now, and that's not usually a good thing. There's not grant writers per se in other departments. They have somebody on staff that helps seek grants. For instance, planning and zoning, Eric Lashinsky gets involved with, applying for grants, and that's not his role at all. So I think they do it through current staffing levels. They have a contractual position they're using that obviously is not everything they need.
Mr. Malinoff?
We have an additional, Michael Malinoff, City Manager, we have an additional resource called the Ferguson Group. I boarded to the council just a few minutes ago. That's our federal lobbyists. They're assisting for federal grants for all the departments, and a couple have availed themselves of it.
Sounds like the 2.2 is a state grant, correct?
It is a total of all our grants. We have one federal grant right now for $3,300 for Bulletproof vests.
Okay, but the other 2.2 is the state grant?
Correct, state.
Okay. So those two positions were not funded. Those were the unfunded enhancements.
That's correct.
Okay. And we're talking $230,000 is the cost for those positions.
Yes.
Okay. Last question has to do with bonuses. I know you guys operate somewhat differently than HR. When you're recruiting, especially laterals, do you have, or have you had the flexibility to add additional salary, bonus?
So for lateral officers, they don't have to start at base pay. We can bring them in at a higher step. We talk with HR about what step, given their experience, is appropriate to bring them in at. We also have a state grant for police recruitment and retention that includes some signing bonuses, but it's limited to $1,000, and we're only giving it to officers one time. So like there's a signing bonus, and we have a longevity bonus that we also included in that grant. But even if officers hit different milestones while the period of the grant is on, we're making sure every officer gets it at least once. So it's $1,000 basically.
But the total is $25,000, right, from the state that you're getting?
The total for that grant is $25,000, because that also includes tuition reimbursement. So we asked for more this year, but they did not do our full funding. So we're out of tuition reimbursement after the second quarter. In fact, someone put in for tuition reimbursement for the second quarter, and there wasn't enough for there was like 3 people that put in for it, and there was only enough for 2 people. The bilingual bonus, which is for using a different language skill for police work. So the people who put in for that have to show that they used their language skill other than English for a police matter during the period. That has been exhausted for this fiscal year. The health club dues are still going, and the signing bonus, the longevity bonus I think the signing bonus is done, but the longevity bonus, there's a little more left for the last 2 quarters. We are going to put in a request to the state if they have any additional funds that are left from that we could use them. It's been good for us, for our officers, to be able to give them something for those things. And it's just unfortunate they didn't fund our full ask.
Okay, I have a follow-up. Mr. Malinoff has all the answers.
Michael Malinoff, City Manager. We're in active negotiations with Local 400, and APD and our representatives are all aware of the possibility of the need to negotiate that. I don't want to get into a great detail on it, but it isn't something that we have ignored. And I wanted you to know. I wish I had more information. Unfortunately, more their schedule than ours. We haven't had a lot of negotiations. Our next one's May 1st.
Well, I guess my question has to do with the amount that is available for APT for retention and recruitment. And if that amount is predicated on what is in your budget as opposed to HR's budget, or, help.
So the retention part, no, we do have a recruitment budget, but it's minimal as far as supplies for attending job fairs and things like that.
So that, it's all related to, it's not just a retention bonus or a step on the scale. And I heard you mention longevity, and I heard Ms. Dickinson mention the fact that we're getting rid of longevity steps. So how do they mesh?
Well, so
Mr. Malinoff?
No, you can.
Yeah, so for our thinking with this grant to do these longevity bonuses were to get people to stay past the bump. So usually when someone's hired with the old pay scale, there's like a gap of where they don't receive regular increases for a period. So we were looking at filling that gap. So the gaps where people aren't getting regular increases if they're not promoted or there's no cost of living increase. So we targeted those areas of our salary scale currently. Now, obviously with this new pay scale, that'll stop those kind of down years where there's no activity happening for the officers. And I do want to say, too, the other thing that we have that's funded, that's in our union contract, is a recruitment, like a finder's fee bonus. So when the chief gives out his card, I'm not saying the chief's going to put in for this, but officers do. They can recommend people that they should come work with us, and if the person is hired and successfully completes a year with us, they get I think it's $2,500, finder's fee bonus for bringing someone to us.
Do you see what I'm getting to? If it's not in your budget, we don't have the opportunity to recruit and retain at the level we need to make sure that we get to 124. That's my concern. Mr. Malinoff?
Michael Malinoff, City Manager. I don't mean to be obtuse because of the union negotiations.
I know.
You certainly understand that. All of these people at the table sit at the table on our side for the union negotiations, so they are aware that these are things we're discussing with the unions, and they may end up having something like that, big or small, in their budget. It's just that we haven't gotten to that point yet, and
I guess my concern is not what's negotiated, because I'm good with whatever you come to, but the source of the funding. Do we restrict our ability through the funding mechanism? That I don't want to see us not be able to recruit and retain and give the signing bonuses and finder's fees and all of that because we've restricted the police budget. You know what I mean? This is a city budget. This is the #1 department, largest department, most expensive department, and by virtue of the community survey, a highly valued department. because everybody feels safe. So, I feel like we need to make sure they have all the tools. And money is a big tool. So that's where I'm going with that. My last question has to do with college reimbursement. Why is this another opportunity where it's in your budget and not in HR? I would think that all college reimbursement is in HR.
So they mentioned earlier, there's a plan for citywide program. And so we're aware of that with the talks that we've been going on. Because there was no citywide program before, it had been suspended probably when I was a brand new officer within a couple years of me being hired. The city
That was yesterday, wasn't it?
The city used to have a program, but that's dating myself. But we saw that gap. We had there's this grant out there that could fill it. We applied for it. Obviously, we would wish more people would be going to school and furthering themselves, while they're working for us. It's a benefit to us and to them. But the city that's their plan to do something citywide. And so we're really excited about that as well. And I can speak personally because I'm in degree program right now too.
Well, and we implemented, of course, educators are always in school, but it was the University of Maryland college rate. I don't know what the rate is that's offered, but whatever rate that the University of Maryland charges per credit was what the employees received as college reimbursement. And so that's something that needs to be considered because we want to enhance it so that our staff, whether it's APD staff or, public works staff, will want to be enticed to go back to school. And we're just helping them, and helping them to matriculate up in our system.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to hear former Chief Charles Ramsey, who served for Washington, D.C. Police and Philadelphia Police, speak last summer. And one of the things he said when he was a young man in Chicago, he was in a corner store and ran into a cop who said, what are you doing with your life? And he said, I might go to college and do, X, Y, and Z. And the cop said, hey, we have a cadet program and we'll pay for your college while you're in the cadet program. Mm-hmm. He got his degree. He became, Chicago PD, chief multiple times after that. I think that's a great model to strive for in Annapolis, that we have them, we already have many very educated police officers who came to us with master's degrees, law degrees, but we should cultivate that as well for everybody.
Yeah, and for everyone. I mean, of course, for APD, but for all of our employees, there should be a college reimbursement.
Yeah.
All right.
I forgot. It's funny because on fire department,
Alderman Finlayson, I just wanted to say that we are trying to close that gap with the state. So the grant that we currently have with PAC that funds our police accountability efforts, they put in a new provision in there for tuition reimbursement. So we'll be looking at trying to scoop up some of that too.
Do we know what rate they're using?
No, ma'am, I do not.
Yeah, there's also a Maryland scholarship for law enforcement that requires a service obligation that reimburses up to half of tuition, and it is at Maryland, specifically Maryland schools. So I've actually taken advantage of that scholarship.
And the rate?
It's the Maryland, you have to go to a Maryland school, so it's,
Yeah, more reason for grant writers. I saw that the fire department got $15,000, but I don't know what that is for. And thank you for calling attention to the grants, because I also saw that you got shortchanged by the county by $50,000. Next.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stuart.
So really quickly, I'm going to go back to, on the staffing summary, there's the alert grant coordinator and the grant coordinator. Both of those are contract. Those are in addition to the two that you didn't get approved, the contractual full-time.
So the alert grant is actually, that's the position from that grant. So they work for that grant, which is basically vehicle theft prevention. So they provide numbers and things like that, but they're not doing the reporting for that grant, and they didn't write the grant. It's a part-time position.
Okay.
And then the, I'm sorry, the grant coordinator. I don't actually know what that is.
It was on last year's budget too.
I'll have to look. That might have been a position that, no. No, I'll have to look at that. And I just went over this with Katie and Jody, so I should know, but I'll have to look it up some more. Oh, yeah, Katie's looking at it.
So does that then mean that we could make this contractual full-time grant coordinator a full-time, funded because it's on their sheet?
Depends on if it's funded and if it what it is. So let's figure that out.
So
that is the grant writer position. So that is the part-time contractual grant writer.
So it's not a coordinator?
No.
So I'll add a couple of pieces of information. One, are they proposing that you have a grant writer or a grant administrator and would not need the part-time person who's currently assisting them? That frees up some funding. In addition, the department has a significant amount of turnover savings. We've built that into their budget, but as you can see with their spending projections, they're going to have a lot of additional turnover savings, and I would want to discuss this with them, but there's a possibility that with those savings, they could fund a position or positions in that way too, with the problem that they're having with the vacancies. There's some savings there. So I don't know if they feel like they could make that work with their current funding. I'm just saying that with the part-time grant person funding and their vacancy savings, would they be able to manage these positions with those funds? So that's something we can discuss as a part of the budget process.
Right. I think that would sort of make sense, because we've talked a lot that if you could have those positions filled and going after grants, you could ultimately backfill any of the turnover savings that you use, right? So if you're actually able to apply for more than the $2.2 million, then they actually start paying for themselves, those two positions. So
yeah, that part-time grant writer we would not need if we had the full-time grant writer. So we could definitely talk about that, Jody. Yeah, it's kind of a chicken and egg scenario with that stuff. Like having those positions filled would help us free time to work on other things more, and also look for more funding for those recruitment efforts. That would be helpful as well.
Okay. The speed cameras that you talked about, I know we have one red light camera?
Yes, 5 speed cameras and 1 red light camera.
All right. Do we have a cost of those speed cameras? And I know that it's also a cost to be reviewing them and validating the ticket.
Yeah, I don't know that I have a full cost, but we could work on something for the amount of time that those officers are spending validating. That bill did not make it through this year, so it has to be officers that review that validate the tickets. There was also an additional bill that was up on, you'd really like this, Alderwoman Tierney. It was noise or acoustic abatement systems. And when I first saw that, I was like, what does that mean? Apparently it's a system that is like a red light camera, but for loud vehicles.
Oh, gosh.
And I thought if we put that on Duke of Gloucester,
There you go.
there would be a lot of happy residents.
Let's put it right outside my window, please.
That's what Judy said. It did to get passed? Because it passed. It's piloted in Anne Arundel County though, so I'm hoping that we can, because it was a
Which one
pilot-
passed?
The noise one. So I thought I looked. Apparently I wasn't looking in the right spot. But it's a pilot program that was going to allow it to happen, I think, in PG, Montgomery, and Anne Arundel County. We're in Anne Arundel County, so I don't know why we wouldn't be allowed to participate. So I'm definitely going to look into that. So your question more about the cost of, total cost?
The cost to increase the number of speed cameras we have and/or red light cameras. I'd like to see that just as we start to look at some of our one-time use funds that are left over. We don't have tons, but.
Well, unfortunately, it's not so much a cost of us putting it in. These companies, they make money from each ticket. So a lot of times the amount they're charging us to install the cameras is minimal because they're recouping their losses but with the installation. Where the time comes in is the time it takes me to make sure that we're actually putting it in a spot that makes sense and that it's within the guidelines, and then making sure that everyone knows that we're doing it, and then the cost of the officers validating the tickets for the additional cameras.
And lastly, I would only ask as the chief of police that we vet any vendors that we would use, because there's been horror stories, and I haven't spoke much to that today, but anytime you hire vendors for profit in the administration of justice, then they have a vested interest in seeing that tickets get out. Baltimore was in trouble with that a couple years ago, where they found that they were criminally responsible for altering the speeds and giving people tickets who shouldn't have gotten them because business was slow. So once people slowed down, they had to find a way to generate revenue, and people got ticketed unfairly. So I like the program to get them to slow down, but that has to be the focus and not just a revenue generator. And we have to make sure that we vet the right vendor to make sure that the integrity of the program is maintained.
We really are going to consider that as an amendment to the budget. So thank you if you give us that information. Okay, time check. Are you okay till 1:10 or something? Or let's just try.
All right, I have one more thing and then they can go. I want to say this about the cadets. Is there a recruitment process? Is it 2 that we have now, or are there more than 2?
There's 2 right now. There are openings. They're on our website under Jobs with the City.
And they're paid positions?
They are paid very minimally. I think it's like $15 an hour.
3 times what I'm making.
Yeah.
And is that a national program? Is it?
I mean, it's our program. Any department might have a cadet program. They're not necessarily the same across departments.
Baltimore, for example, has a full-time cadet program. They're mandated to go to school, and they have benefits. They have health insurance, the whole night. They're considered full-time employees. Ours is a lot different than some agencies, the bigger agencies.
And how long is their program?
You go in at 18 and
No,
you
ours.
have, ours. Same thing.
Yeah, you can start at 18, and then by the time you're 20 and a half, you could be hired as a police officer. So you have to complete, if you don't get hired by the time you're 21, then you can't be a cadet anymore.
Okay, so if our 2 are 18 and they stay on, they could stay on continuing to be cadets until 21? And
Yes.
Okay. I want to put it as an earmark that in our internship program, that perhaps this should be
One of them.
Part of.
it, because I believe that we pay our internships more than $15 an hour.
And you have space.
No question.
And you have space, and you have need, and you have recruitment efforts. But I just wanted to say how delightful they've been. I know that they're doing other things than being in the police department. They're helping me a lot, and it should be commended that the police department is providing people to help with some of our social programs. And that's all I'll say on that.
And I make it a point to spend a little time with them a couple times a week. I want them to see the chief, and I'll talk about my journey to inspire them to want to come into law enforcement service beyond their cadet program.
Thank you.
Okay. Alderman Arnett? You said you didn't want to go last.
I think it's appropriate that the public safety chair be given the last word on this. So I want to return to personnel because that's what I hear the most about from my constituents. It seems like we've been stuck at about 110 officers over time. I'm glad to hear we might boost up to 113. You're authorized to 124. I think if we follow the APF and that 3.2 ratio, you should be up to 131.
That's correct.
So the question I'll put to you, if the chief makes it to every fast food restaurant in the city and we get to 131,
We have no choice.
what would be different? How would Annapolis be different? And you don't have to answer that now, but I do want to plant that seed because it is a question that I need to answer to my constituents. I'm arguing when you look at your performance measures, you look at your success rate on closing cases, I don't see that we're doing anything but a good job. Not that I'm arguing we shouldn't. I would love to see us have 131 sworn officers. I think we could get back into some more community policing, staffing the resource centers, things like that. But I just wanted to plant that seed. What if we reached nirvana and got to that 131? But it does lead to the question on the budget request that Alderwoman Tierney, the chair, touched on. The number of staff are staying the same, and so there is seemingly a big jump from the projected 24 of 22.2 million to the proposed budget of 26.1 million. And I think that's a question that we can ask the finance department to help us sort through. But not that I'm complaining, because I think my constituents really do want to see more police officers. So,
Will we see that in open.gov or?
well, I
You're
can't get
probably
back to
looking at it.
open.gov.
No, I know,
but
we've
wanted
got three
I wanted
things
to
in
see
front
the
of us.
breakdown of that. to
Yeah, we need
see
a breakdown of
the cause of that increase.
The increase in staff and salary.
I'm almost through. I would suggest on the funding enhancements, the contract coordinator and grant writer, those seem like pretty high salaries compared to what other people were getting and are paying in their departments. I'm wondering if the levels there were more modest, if there might not be more result in getting
Yes, including.
help on grant writing, because I think grants, like, do we not get burn grants and Pew grants or Pell grants anymore? Those were big federal dollars we used to get, I thought.
I don't know about the Pell Grants, but those figures that we submitted, Alderman Arnett, is also includes fringe. They would be full-time employees. So when you say $100,000, it includes fringe.
Yeah, but other departments have, well, maybe it's better to go with contracts, but it just seemed to me when I looked at those, they seem high relative to what.
Well, if it's done correctly, their salary and compensation would be tied into the amount of money that they bring in. That's the appropriate way to do it. So, that's capitalism at its best. If we hire a $100,000 grant writer and they bring in successfully 25 million, that's a good deal for the city. And so that's my thinking when I advocate for that. It's beyond, because many of our positions are not tied to production. That's the best way I could put it, most respectful way. But this would be tied to production, and we would make sure that that was articulated in their description.
We'll just plant the thought that maybe lower costs could get better
Director
results.
Dickinson has an explanation of that.
No, I just wanted to clarify that if they plan on hiring a civil service position with full benefits, I don't think we can tie it to a performance of a grant attain. If they're going to hire a contract person to do it, then there may be more leeway there.
That's what I favor. I was going to say that. I favor, Jody, a contract, because I realize if it's civil service, of course, it's more complicated. But we need somebody who can get us money and have the ability to evaluate their performance. You know, this is not somebody who has a civil service contract with the city and just can sit around and not produce. So I favor contracts.
Assistant
So I
City
wanna
Manager
note-
has to chime in on it too.
I just want to jump in. So I did this as a business myself for 6 years, and just the general industry standard is that arrangement is generally considered unethical. There are a lot of reasons why things get funded or not funded, and so generally that's not how those contracts and stuff are written. I think that's worth a conversation, not something we have to solve today.
Right.
But there's time and space ahead of us for that kind of discussion.
So just on the salary, the 122 is based on a salary of 79,000.
Right.
So the rest was all fringe
So
benefits.
maybe I'm just thinking it could be more palatable if that number were lower. Maybe it should be a contract rather than a staff person. But I do want to note that I heard your point, and it was made by several of you. It's not just writing and getting the grant, it's the management of the grant that's the real killer. And that's the same sort of thing with the cameras. The surprise for us was getting the cameras, whether it's light cameras or cameras on the property. It was the storage and the redaction that were the killers. And so I definitely want more cameras. I was impressed when I was at MML that on speed cameras in school districts, state law says you can only give a ticket if they're 11 miles over the speed limit. I mean, that's even in this city where people drive pretty fast, it's a pretty tall barrier to generate a lot of revenue. So it's got to be more for deterrent than actual revenue generation.
That's right. And of course, we don't want to do anything unethical. But, you know, certain positions, you have to have some type of performance standard. People have to know that they're going to be held accountable for a standard. And that's the point that I was making with the cameras. Everybody wants cameras, but it's a lot to go into cameras in terms of its management and to make sure that we don't engage in anything unethical, that we hire vendors who's going to, and it really does happen where they fudge the calibrate it so that it says that they are going one speed when they're not going. Baltimore got in big trouble behind that, and they were criminally charged, the city was, for hiring a vendor knowing that, I don't know the merits of the case, but I know that the vendors, they had to go back and take back, this when I was the inspector general, they had to go back and reimburse all the motorists, which was millions of dollars. Does that sound right, Rhonda? Millions of dollars they had to reimburse the vendors because the cameras weren't calibrated when it was uncovered. And I believe it was a federal investigation. Don't hold me to that. But they found out that they purposely calibrated them because business was slow.
Last point, on the performance measures, I did a little extrapolation to get a full 24, and it still looks like everything is good. I just divided everything by 3/4. Except the number that seems high is aggravated assaults. Is that just an anomaly that it is so high, or is there something behind that that we need to be thinking more about?
So with the aggravated assaults, that would also include domestic incidents. And to the chief's point, when he spoke about coming into NIBRS for 2024, that would be the additional crimes that would be counted. For instance, if you had a homicide, if the victim was assaulted, that would count as an aggravated assault. It's just more numbers as it relates to interpersonnel violence.
That's right.
Okay, but still, it's the one that sticks out. When I extrapolate that out, it comes to 199, which is 41 more than in fiscal 23. The question is as simple, is it just anomalous, small numbers, or is there something we need to be worrying about that are, particularly if it has to do with a lot of domestic stuff, things that we need to be worrying about some kind of different approach.
Well, I think that part of that relates to our uptick in violence. You know, we did have the number of homicides, but it was really the shootings, you know, that were, and those are all captured in aggravated assaults. Like, so there's no other. So, yeah. And I mean, if we broke it down by month, we would get a better idea. Did that occur in the first half of the fiscal year, that July, you know, through December period, or is it occurring now? Right. That might give you a better idea of what it relates to.
And I'm gonna say this, I used to teach this even at the graduate level. When you talk about aggravated assault, you're talking about a common law crime, which is very broad. When you talk about codified law enacted by the Maryland General Assembly, then we're going to eventually start counting those different when we report into the FBI at the end, because they tell a better story. For example, Alderman Arnett, is that when we have these discharges, if we can identify a target, that automatically counts as an aggravated assault. So it's very broad. There's no clear-cut definition. I understand your question very well, which is a very good question. The problem is that it's hard to articulate why. Part of it is NABRS, transitioning from UCR to NABRS. Any expert will tell you that. But the other part of it is that we still have to tweak that. I say we, the justice system has to tweak that, because those aggravated assaults, many things can be an aggravated assault, even if no injury occurred. If I pulled out my gun and pointed it at Lamar and then put it back in my holster, no injury, not a scratch on him, that's an aggravated assault, because I used a deadly weapon to threaten him or to put him at ease. So it's a very difficult question to answer in one sound bite, but we'll take another look at that and see if we can get more clarity.
So, but the overall comment is this seems to show the continuing decrease in crime. And I would suggest that if you added these columns up and divided it by 41,000 people, the crimes per capita are pretty low.
I was going to say that, and
So
they are.
pretty
Yes, sir.
safe.
Absolutely.
City, my takeaway.
Absolutely.
It's not good when it happens to you when you have a larceny or something, but nevertheless, I think we should feel comforted that we're in a safe city.
It's a very safe city, but I also recognize, sir, and it's a very safe city statistically, per capita, very safe. But I always say, in addition to that one person who was a victim, they're a victim, and they're not interested in the stats. And so we want to try to cultivate a culture in the Annapolis Police Department that if one victim, taking a teleological approach. You know, we don't take the teleological approach. We don't go the greatest good for the greatest number and tout that as success. We take the more of a deontological approach. We have a duty to protect everybody. So if we have one victim, then, but I understand your point, and I appreciate you saying that. We are statistically a safe city, but keeping in mind that we do value one victim out of 41,000.
So Alderman Arnett, I just did a quick little, just to tout our crime map on our website at annapolis.gov/police. I did a little filter by date on aggravated assaults. So the second half of last year, 104, this year, 39.
Yeah.
So that's where the bulk of those assaults occurred. Obviously, it doesn't quite add up to 149, but it's close. So our crime map is pretty accurate.
Are we counting aggravated assaults in NABRS, or are we doing it by first degree, second degree, like in line with the legislature? Do you know?
I probably have to double check.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to try to run through this as quickly as possible. First of all, I'd like to thank Ms. Dickerson for the outstanding report and presentation this morning. We missed that. I did. And as far as aggravated assaults, I've had several conversations with Captain Howard about Ward 3's numbers. And if you all recall, the last council meeting, I fell on the sword. I was looking at other things in other wards, and my ward was definitely the worst when it came to aggravated assaults, thefts from autos, thefts of autos, and those types of issues, and substance use disorder. So again, today I will fall on the sword again, but we've been talking about that, and we're gonna get that straight. Like I said, I'm gonna run through this as quickly as I can. Number one, Captain Howard had come to me, I guess, about a month before the ATF conference. And he had sent out the email to all of us. And he was concerned because he didn't hear responses. And I asked him to send it out again. And I know we've all got schedules going on all of the time. And this was a half-day conference. But I learned a lot because a lot has changed in 20 years since I've done the work as a prosecutor. So I want to thank him. But I really would strongly suggest that whenever you can get the opportunity, and even if you meet with, say, command staff quarterly, I think that would be great. I think it would be really helpful for a lot of these questions. But I find it helpful connecting with them on a regular basis and understanding and more what's really going on in the police department. So I would invite not only my colleagues, but also high-level staff within the city, I think, because we're all integrated as departments. So I think that is really, really critical. The next thing, Captain Kleindienst and I had a long chat up to Hagerstown and back about to look at the drone program. As far as officer wellness, I know that's a big thing for him. And I didn't know because I saw in your presentation today that gym membership was included, but I don't know if Captain Kleindienst would like to give us a quick and dirty about the importance of officer wellness. 30 seconds or less.
Sure. I don't have all the numbers in my head drilled in like I needed to, but we did meet with the company, Sigma Tactical Wellness. It's a program that we wanted to bring to the city, specifically to our public safety officials, both fire and police, starting with the police side because that's where I'm most vested in. But it deals with their cardiac health and the prevention of basically heart attacks and on-duty issues. So typically one on-duty heart attack was somewhere in the $7 million range, I believe it was, what it would outlay to the city costs for the lifetime of that injury. And in order to get the program started, it was about $100,000 to have every officer screened for their cardiac wellness through this company that will actually come to APD and do the screening. And it'll set the officers up with health strategies, dietary and physical exercise programs, but they also do a blood screen for certain markers that come with the elevated potential for a cardiac event, as well as a carotid or the pulmonary, autowoman, the sonogram, to see if there's any potential things. And this company's had great success in reducing medical events for police officers. Unfortunately, the numbers have started to track backwards as far as age. The average age for a cardiac event, or the average age for an officer to have a cardiac event is 46, which is crazy. The average number, I believe, of pension payments, Jody might like this number, but it's only like 24 to 48 for a retired officer before they have the Widowmaker. What we're trying to do is get this program brought here so that we can prevent that, which hopefully gives not only the citizens and officer on duty longer throughout their career, but a healthier, more fit officer to be able to face the challenges that we have.
Okay, thank you so much.
Rhonda, one question. I just want to take a picture for the city website because we're just all so honored that you showed up in uniform, and we're just so humbled about that. So I think I got everybody. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, I'll give it to Mitchell.
Madam Chair.
Thank you.
The other thing I want to kind of touch base on as far as the solvability is concerned, and the chief and I have had a lot of conversations about their standard being probable cause, but the state's attorney must prove beyond a reasonable doubt. So when it gets to solvability, they also have to consider what the state's attorney is looking for. Not that they discard the probable cause, but I just want to kind of bring that to everyone's attention. We talked about recruitment, and Ms. McCoy and I have had several conversations about that, and the money that is involved that we're kind of talking about today. And I know she said to me several times, we're leaving millions on the table. I mean, did you want to kind of elaborate a little bit on that, Ms. McCoy?
Again, there are a lot of federal grants out there. We standardly apply for a lot of state grants, but the problem is not identifying. And Mr. Melanoff has given us a group that is helping us with identifying the grants. The problem is not only so much the identification; it is the management of the grant. So there is like much to do, and with the state grant, there's much to do, but with the federal grants, there's more. But there is a lot of money, and then it's for state grants. Every year is very tedious. We have to go. I have 2 right now that I have to begin to start to write narratives and things for, so we can keep them. That's every year. With the federal grants, they're usually year-over-year grants, and, they run 2 or 3 years. So, we don't have to keep, applying every year. But there are a lot of management. It's a lot to managing the grant.
Let me say something. The Justice Department, Garland Merrick announced a couple of months ago.
It's been at least about 6 months.
It's been about 6 months ago. I'm sitting in my office up on Taylor Avenue in Maryland Garland, the Attorney General of the United States. It was like $6 billion.
It's a lot of money.
It was a lot of money that they had already earmarked for the prevention of gun violence. And I just sat there and my eyes welled up with tears. And I'm not exaggerating, because we can't apply for any of that money. We don't have the bandwidth to manage it. So even if they gave it to us, I said, so I just told Lamar, he can probably get the exact numbers. I said, we can't even compete with that because we can't manage it. And that's a shame, because we could have used that.
Thank you, Chief. I recall you did mention that to me. The other thing, I think you've answered this question. My understanding with this Ferguson group, they could supply us possibly with a person. And my question was going to be, would that person have law enforcement experience? But you've answered the question. They're just an entity that kind of points us in the direction. It's not an actual body. Am I correct?
I believe they do have they have expertise available in grant writing. They certainly have staff that draw from a variety of backgrounds. The primary, and I believe the primary contact that's happened so far has really been around just making sure folks kind of know what the lay of the land is on the federal level, not so much doing actual writing. I'm looking at Rhonda and Amy to make sure I'm actually saying the right thing.
Or was it a wish?
You got your mic.
I had a meeting, and they pointed out some grants that we could possibly look at getting. One was a COPS grant, where we can fund some police, positions that we have. Then recruit to bring more people in, and then move some of the older, more seasoned officers into some of the investigative units and things that we have. But they were very instrumental on knowledge of the grants and how they work. I'm just I didn't get the impression that they're going to manage it. Right. So someone from the department would have to manage it, and it lies my problem. I've identified, you and I worked on the beginning of a grant that we need. We have every day people show up to the police department lot and exchange children who are probably ordered there by a judge because there was probably some domestic violence. Well, guess what? The police is the police station, but where don't we want the police? We don't want them on our lot. We want them out on the street. We don't want them in the department. We want them out on the street. So bringing them to the department presents challenges because the police aren't out there. They're in the street. But that grant, just trying to get the it's grant management, and then there's grant coordination. The grant coordination is a lot, trying to bring all the entities together, write a budget, and coordinate what you're going to do, and figure out who you're going to hire. Then once you got all of that, then it goes into that grant management, making sure that everything is going the way that we said the grant was going to go. That's a lot of work,
And we still don't know the best place for that. We don't, so we need to talk about that. We really
But,
don't.
we-
There's
we-
three pieces to it. or four.
And we had found a location for the exchange to take place, other than the police department. We had several meetings, including with DSS. But the grant, we didn't have the bandwidth for anyone to write the grant nor to manage the grant. But this is can be a huge potential issue when mother and father, custodial parents, exchanging a child on the weekends, and the judges ordered them to come to the police station parking lot to make this exchange, and Ms. McCoy indicated to me she happened to be on the parking lot that day, and the parents were going at it. And so this is a potential public safety issue, and we took this as far as we could go, but we couldn't go any further.
The coordination piece, just to bring all the entities together, have hold the meetings, get everybody locked down to a budget, and then get the grant written and submitted.
Right.
If we ran out of time.
Yeah. I like the conversation that's going to be had concerning the turnover savings, and thank you so much, Ms. Dickerson, for bringing up that piece. And again, we talked about the aggravated assaults and the thefts, and so we're working on that. We're going to have a meeting the beginning of May to see where we're at for April. But thank you all. Thank you all so very much for everything, and everybody in this room has contributed to all of this, but I appreciate it. And Cap McGuinness, you're centralized right here and kind of give us direction and got all the facts and the historical context. So I thank you all again for all of that. Thank you, Chief.
Yeah.
By the way, the minority that is now up to about $28 billion. I'd like to see
What's sir?
Mike's not on, Chief.
No, I was just saying this for the record. I quoted $6 billion, but it's actually $5.8 billion that the United States Department
Billion
of
with a
Justice,
B.
with a B as in baby, $1 billion for handgun prevention grant money that I would love to have the ability to apply for.
Well, may I ask, Mr. Melanoff isn't here, Ms. Buckland is here. Would this be something our federal lobbyists could pursue for us?
So the folks that she spoke to, that is that group. They have been in contact with that federal lobbying group.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because we've been talking about the fact that we have a hired lobbyist firm who lobbies federally for us, and we've been talking about a lobbyist statewide who will lobby us on the state level for us. So this,
they do. The Ferguson Group engages in lobbying, but they also monitor just general funding, including grants, and so that's the capacity in which they had been in contact.
So this is what I'd like to do, and Vicki, in our deliberations, let's take the time and carve out some time to talk about grants, who best to write them, who best to, there's the four pieces, submit them, administer them, and then make sure all the rules, right? There's like four parts to it. And it's very confusing how we have it right now. I mean, I think the departments know the best what they need. And then who does that go to? Who's the best person to write it, get it into the right people, lobby for it? I mean, there's that proactiveness that you can't possibly, right? So let's talk about that and see if there's a way we allocate the money so it's in the best spot, right? Agree? At deliberations, yeah. Okay, Joe, do you have?
Well, we talked earlier about the grant SOP that we, that's going to help, that would help you get an idea on.
That would be part of the discussion, yeah. Okay. All right, well, with that, we do have some gifts for you for bearing with us for almost 2 hours, but it's all really important stuff. And can't say enough what you guys do. So these are mementos. Oh, you got a good one. Like that one, Chief? Yeah. You got the good one. All right, unless there's anything for the good of the order, I'll have a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second. Karma say second. Can I say second? Karma say second. Say second. Yes. Second, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.